Hey guys, how you doing? Not gonna lie, gonna be up front, like I always am. Having a tough day. Having a tough day, man. Timing is always has always been like I'm the guy who literally asks the girl out like the day or like the hour after somebody else asks her out. Like I'm the guy that's always like the timing is bad. And I finally hit it, got 1,000 subscribers. Right as my content is all about like, hey, here's a CIA document saying that we're responsible for this war. And you know what YouTube's doing? You know what YouTube's doing? You'll never believe what YouTube is up to, guys. YouTube is literally at the exact moment that I hit 1,000 subscribers and I want to submit for monetization. YouTube is prohibiting content, denying, minimizing, or trivializing well-documented violent events. We are now removing content about Russia's invasion in Ukraine that violates this policy. Like literally the timing. It's so fucking exactly my life. It's exactly. Hey, Ligandies, Famita, Eric, how you guys all doing? It's like it's my life. It's my life. It's every single like. Yeah, they took down RT Europe today. Yeah, RT America got shut down already. Like, literally the year I graduate from art school is the year that Canada cuts arts funding across the board. In some places as badly as 80%. Like, that's the timing of my life. Just like right on the wrong side of the bubble. So I am still going to apply for partnership with YouTube, but I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait a minute. Just going to wait a minute. Maybe this whole thing finally does blow over. Maybe something actually does finally, like maybe we finally move into a place where this isn't like the big ass story about all of this. I mean, there's lots of other things to talk about, right? There's inflation, the collapse of our civilization, such that we had one, frankly. Like, so today has been a very like. Oof. I just posted an article that you might find very interesting on the Discord. It's about how economists indoctrinate student into a false reality. I mean, we know, yeah, like we know. This might be worth taking a look at, but like we know that this is the case, right? Like we know that this is the case, and the way that we know that this is the case is that the capitalist education systems created a new branch of economics called business school. Like, you know that your economists are completely fake and completely full of shit if the capitalist system itself, if your free market system says, yeah, but we still need to teach people economics. Like, we can't just be teaching them total bullshit, right? Practice your iguana roasting skills. Good to see you, Compton, Methane, Major. Good to see you guys. Not gonna lie, guys. I'm having a very I'm depressed. I'm in a very bad spot. I started the process of doing the yeah, Russell Bentley was terminated by YouTube. Although there's credible information to show that that was a brigading, that the Nazis brigaded him, and his stuff gets pulled down uh, by the algorithm, which that's not good. Like that's not good. But yeah, like why would they create business school if the economics department was doing its job, right? But the economics department is not doing its job. It's not teaching economics. It's teaching this fake Milton Friedman-esque like pretend version of what economics is. I mean, it's possible that this is as far down the path that we'll go, that things will pull back, right? Like, it's possible that we'll avoid the rounding up. It's possible that we'll avoid but I mean, this is why they want to shut down all of these dissidents. The reason why you shut down people like RT America, is so that you can start doing some really scary shit domestically, right? Like, that's the reason you start really doing this. And of course, they don't want a counter narrative to start to penetrate into the public. They don't want people to know that, like, for God's sakes, the current director of the CIA, while he was the ambassador to Russia, wrote a document called Niet Means Niet, where he outright said that the actions of the United States and NATO are going to lead to a war. And now he's the director of the CIA. Like, what do you need? Like, what do you need? But if I tell people that, am I a dissident? If I literally tell people that the current director of the CIA wrote a document while he was the ambassador to Russia that what NATO and the United States was doing was going to lead to a war with Russia, am I going to be censored? Am I going to be shut down? Am I going to be removed from YouTube? Like, is that Russian propaganda? Like, is that Russian propaganda to tell people that the current head of the CIA, William Burns, the current head of the CIA, William Burns, former Russian ambassador, like, has literally confirmed everything I've said. Like, literally. Like, everything I've said. And while that's going on, 70 to 80% of the populace, 60 to 70% of the populace is literally saying, Ukraine, NATO, and the United States bear zero responsibility for this crisis. Like, that's how bad it is right now. Like, and this is bad, guys. Like, this is bad. This is post 9/11 hysteria, what we're looking at. Like, and we know what happened in post 9/11 hysteria, right? What happened with post 9/11 hysteria? Like, the war in Afghanistan, the war in the Middle East, had like 80% support, 90% support in the populace, right? That we engaged in a war after 9/11 that is still ongoing, right? That even the people who benefited from it describe it as at least a tactical blunder, right? Nobody acknowledges that the invasion of Iraq was a good idea, right? If they're not willing to call it a moral abhorrence, which is what it is, they're willing to call it a tactical blunder, a mistake. Well, here we are again. And the populace is doing the exact same thing. No, Cotton, I actually do disagree. I think the 9/11 hysteria was exactly as bad as this. I think like, people who were against the Iraq War got removed, right? Like, there was silencing of dissenters at the same time. That the like, Phil Donahue lost his job, Chris Hedges lost his job, right? That if you spoke out again, like, remember when what's his name, the comedian, that hack comedian that has that late night show, I can't remember his name all of a sudden, Bill Maher. He said that we kind of deserved it. Like, we've been meddling in the Middle East, like, we kind of deserve this. And he lost his show, right? Like, he was able to walk it back. But, like, the silencing of, freedom fries, exactly. Like, that kind of pettiness that we're seeing now, where, like, Russian pianists aren't allowed to play the piano and shit. Yep, Oceania is at war with East Asia. Yeah, don't be late for the hate session. Yep. It's and that's true content, right? 9/11 era didn't have the kind of social media like we have now. But to me, that's what's so shameful about this from the populist's position. Like, we've been through, like, if you're my age and you're sitting there being like, "Oh, what, stand with Ukraine? Oh, like, you have brain rot. Like, you have brain rot. We've literally done this before. Like, it's the same thing. We literally marched in this direction before. If you ask me, the scariest people in the conversation are the people who are seeing the banning of dissenting voices and are saying good. Those are the scariest people in the conversation, because they're saying things like, yeah, we should remove misinformation. And it's like, okay, who says what is misinformation? The people who are actively lying? The people who have lied before? The people who lied about Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran? Those are the people who we should decide what is propaganda or is misinformation. Those are the people that you think we should be trusting? Like literally Justin I Wear Blackface Trudeau and his Nazi collaborating deputy prime minister? Like, these are the guys that you think should have the final say on what is or is not misinformation? Like, that's a terrifying position. Like, that's a terrifying position to take. Because, like, of course, like, powerful people are going to abuse it. I got called a communist traitor, never felt prouder. That's hilarious, dude. Because, like, the Russians aren't even communist. Like, that's what's so fucking hilarious. Like, and I'm not even defending Russia's society, right? Like, I literally am pointing out who the antagonizer is. And I agree with the head director of the CIA. Like, that's literally what I'm saying now. Right? Like, I'm not even gonna like I'm not even gonna talk about like Russian sources or use Russian propaganda or Russian anything. I guess the benefit of my position is that I can use Western sources to make my point, right? Like, how am I Russian propaganda? I'm agreeing completely with the head director of the CIA, William Burns. His position and my position are exactly the same. So, like, how am I Russian propaganda? That's what's so fucked up about this. Like, the evidence is overwhelming. I actually think that we have more evidence to discredit the narrative today than we did with Iraq. Like, at least they were making a claim in Iraq, right? At least there was a claim. And that claim could not be verified without some kind of action, right? And if you were one of the hawks, your action was, we should invade, right? Whereas if you were one of the doves, you're like, well, there are UN inspectors, and like, we can't. But of course, the hawks could say to the doves, yeah, of course the UN inspectors aren't going to find anything. Saddam Hussein will hide it from them, right? So, like, there was always this narrative that could be somehow believed. But this isn't even a claim. This is literally just lies of omission that the people of America and Canada and Europe just simply are not informed about what's going on. Like, and purposefully so. And you don't even need to listen to Russian sources, right? You don't even need to listen to Russian sources. You just need to listen to the current head director of the CIA, William Burns, while he was the ambassador to Russia. Like, yeah, I had a guy who was trying to argue that 2014 wasn't a coup. Yeah, like, the Nazis think it is, right? Like, the Nazis think it is. Like, I don't know what you need. Like, we literally have a confession letter. Like, we have a confession. I don't know what you need. No, I think really, like, and it pays to remember, guys, it was about 2 years. It was about 2 years before we turned the corner and people started to really acknowledge that this was a hysteria and we made a mistake, right? Like, we had already invaded, and there was already the mission accomplished sign, and there was already this kind of shit going on. But it took about 2 years before before the society was willing to actually turn the corner and start talking about it more openly, and people were willing to actually tolerate dissent, even, right? What gets me to not want to debate is valid points like Ukraine killing people in the Donbass. They just shrug. Yeah. No, that's the nature of a hysteria, right? Like somebody brings up the witch trials. Yeah, just watched Star Trek Next Generation, the Drumhead yesterday. Everyone gets whipped up into a frenzy like the Inquisition witch trials. Like, during the witch trials, if you stood up and said, whoa, guys, what are we talking about here? We're talking about literal witches? Like, no one would listen to that person. That's the nature of a hysteria, right? Like, we're really, like, we're dealing with, like, a wide-eyed, like a crazed, like, I know, like that. We're not dealing with someone who is living in a rational space. Like, they're not living in their brain. They're not actually, like, and nothing is penetrating, right? They're living, like, if I use the chakra, right? They're living in their root. They're just as an animal operates. Like, you can't reason with a wild animal that's backed into a corner. Like, that's not like, and they're doing everything they can to, like, smash anybody who's trying to tell them anything different. Yeah. Well, I've had people straight out tell me that it's fine that we fund Nazis if they fight Russians. Like, straight up. Like, this is, like, the old propaganda, too, right? Like, this connects to, like, the McCarthy period. This connects to the old Soviet Cold War period. This connects to, like, the old blood, right? And straight up, like, the Nazis are coming out. Like, the Nazis are coming out of the woodwork on this one. And really just telling everybody this, and I'm starting to tell people, like, if you're not a Westerner, like, if you don't live in the West, like, don't trust us. Like, just don't. Like, we got a Nazi problem going on here, man. Like, we got a pretty big Nazi problem happening, and it doesn't look like we're doing anything to really counter it seriously, right? Like we're doing performative actions, but nothing substantial. Yeah, exactly. Putin's worse. My absolute favorite is people who are saying, we found a Nazi in a mercenary group, and that's the same. It's like, so, you're ignoring that one Nazi we found in a mercenary group and that Putin used. So that one Nazi we found in a mercenary group, that's the same as literally, like, Nazis in the government, Nazis, like, in the military. The Ukrainian military slogan is a Nazi slogan. Like, the analogy I've been using is the people who've been saying this, it's like they're treating a campfire the same as a house fire. You know, like, they're looking at this campfire being like, oh, that's dangerous, and oh, that's concerning. While there's literally a house fire going on behind them, like, fully raging. And they're just like, these are the same. We need to put the same. Yeah. Yeah, I don't trust us. Like, how much longer until the Russians living in Canada start getting rounded up, do you think? Like, let's be straight. Like, how much longer until the Russians living here in North America start to get rounded up? We've done that before, right? We did that to the Japanese during World War II. Like, we've rounded people up, right? How much longer do you think? If we continue down this path, we can get there, right? And, like, banning dissent, banning people who have dissenting voices, right? Like, we can get into a very dark timeline. And, like, during the World War II period, we didn't have active concentration camps the way that we do now, right? Like, we have, like, active. Someone tried throwing Wagner Group at me in an argument. I said Wagner wasn't my favorite composer. Well, and honestly, anytime I asked for sources about this Wagner Group thing, it's literally like, we found a Nazi. It's just like, yeah, you're gonna have Nazis in a military, like that's gonna happen, right? Like there are Nazis in the American military, and the Canadian military, and the British military, and the French military. Like, just because there is a Nazi doesn't mean that the Nazis have taken over the government and fomented a coup. Like, this is it's just a way to protect themselves, right? That there are Nazis everywhere. There are Nazis everywhere. And then they can just shut down the critical thinking apparatus that they're not using in the first place, right? And like, again, like, people are not using their critical thinking apparatus. They're not really interested in that. That what we are seeing is a hysteria where people are acting just like screaming monkeys. Because that's what they are, right? Like, that's the sad reality about what it is to be a human being, is that we are monkeys, fundamentally. Or apes, if you want to get really fucking annoyingly technical about it. You got fascists attracted to militarism and nationalism? Impossible. Yeah. Well, and we're amidst, like, we're still in this pandemic, right? Like, we're amidst, and like, the society is crumbling. Like, we're entering a Great Depression period. Like, it's going to be really, really bad. Like, it's going to be really, really bad. And as we enter this, like one of the objectives, I think, of banning outfits that where the leftists are, like, RT television was like where Chris Hedges was, where Lee Camp was, where Richard Wolff was, right? Like the heavy hitter leftists had found their home at RT America. And so banning that means that all of the leftists who could have something interesting to say about the decline of America and the decline of the American economy, well, now they've got to find a new outlet. And that's going to take some time, right? And that's going to take a little while for them to achieve, if they ever do, right? If they ever can, and if they ever do, right? And there are still some voices who have managed to sidestep this at the moment. For example, Jimmy Dore. Like, Jimmy Dore hasn't had a direct assault yet, right? It might come, though. They might get him with this, right? Like, he's been reporting all of this stuff. Like, someone like Russell Brand, for example. Like, Russell Brand has, he's been reporting on the biolabs. He's been reporting on the coup, right? So, of course, like, are they going to start going after these guys? Are they, and which one of these guys is going to get used as an example, right? Someone's going to get used as an example, by the way. Like, that's the real truth. Like, that's straight up Phil Donahue. Like, Phil Donahue was the example. That he got removed and he's never come back. And and that set the precedent for all of these journalists, right? Do not speak out against the Iraq War. And so, which one of these guys is going to be used, do you think? Right? Somebody like Brand would be perfect, if you ask me. Right? Just, like, get rid of this guy. Just, like, completely shut him down. You want to come up, buddy? You want to come up? Here you go. Wow. I know, buddy. I know. I wish I was living your life, buddy. Your big concern is where's my next swiff of peanut butter coming from? I suspect Dore and Brand are okay because they play footsie with the right on occasion. I don't know, though, because they're really telling the truth on this. Like, they're really telling the truth on the Russian-Ukrainian war. Like, Jimmy Dore especially. Like, Brand is still sort of figuring it out, but Jimmy Dore has reported on the Donbass war. He's reported on the coup, the Nazis, right? Like, Dore has provided me sources. Like, I like to think that I do a lot of good research, and I like to think that I get a lot of good information, but, like, Jimmy Dore has been providing me source documentation on this issue in significant ways, and has been platforming Max Blumenthal, the Gray Zone, people like Aaron Matei, right? Like, it's like, if you ask me, the voice that I think has been the strongest in this conversation has actually been Dor. And so the idea that we're going to ban RT television, but somebody like Jimmy Dore is going to keep moving forward, we'll see, right? We'll see. We'll see how long it lasts. We'll see how long it lasts. And on a personal note, like, I just hit 1,000 subscribers. YouTube is sending me emails saying like, hey, you can start monetizing. And I'm just like, maybe I want to lay low for a minute. Maybe I want to just lay low for just a minute and just be like, yeah, okay. Like, good to hear you endorse Doe. I wasn't sure on him. I liked him, but he seems very capitalist. Jimmy Dore doesn't have a really accurate critique of his society. He still says what we are doing is crony capitalism, right? So he actually does think that capitalism is a good system because he's never read the Communist Manifesto. He's not like, and his opinion of communism is still very kind of Cold War informed, for sure. Like, all of that is true. But at the same time, I think Jimmy Dore is just a good man. Right? Like, you guys have heard me talk about how I view the world, like, from the energy level. Like, we're all quantum beings. I say this shit all the time. Well, Dore thinks that way too. And that roots him in the real more than anything. Right? So his view on capitalism and crony capitalism and communism and this kind of Cold War understanding and all this kind of stuff, that doesn't supersede his humanity and where he is rooted. And I actually believe that I could sit down with someone like Jimmy Dore and have a really interesting conversation. Yeah, that's another way of saying it, Watson, right? Jimmy Dore is ideologically unmoored because he doesn't have a theoretical background. Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it, right? But that doesn't mean he's not a good man who's trying to find the truth and trying to figure it out. And it really just goes to show you, right? Like, you can be a good man and still get into bad situations. But if you're not a good man and you have a theoretical background or backing, you could still be a total shit. You think Putin is the new Tsar and the Communist Party can restart the USSR? I have no theory on that. I mean, Putin is a Tsar. Like, he views himself that way. And I mean, he's not an elected official. He's in charge of Russia. Like, there are elected officials in Russia, but he's not one of them. And like, he's at the top of this chain. Like, he might as well be a Tsar, right? And we'll see if the Communist Party is in an upswell, though. Like, they're the leaders of the opposition. I'm more concerned with good people, good voices, even if they're occasionally wrong, or if, their stance is less relevant to me. Yeah. Like, and I say it with Dore all the time. Like, Dore goes off into crazy little tangents and fields and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, let him. Like, just let him. Right? And with someone like Russell Brand, I do think that Russell Brand, like, they're kind of hoping it'll just blow over with him. Right? Like I've said about Russell Brand, is like, Brand is like a plastic bag blowing in the wind, and he just kind of goes where the wind takes him. And so I think they're just kind of hoping that things will just blow over with Russell Brand. That it's not gonna. No, exactly. Like Putin is not going to revive the Communist Party in Russia. Exactly. Like, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. But we'll see. Like, I don't know everything about what's going on there, and I mean, Putin eventually dies. Like, that happens. That's really how human politics works in interesting ways. Like, when an established leader dies, the society changes, and things can get significant. And Oh yeah, he's got. You're right about that though. Plastic Band brand. He's got to have a team behind him and stuff. So many viewers, and also like he's clearly sifting through the comments. Like it's clear to me that, and he says it in his videos, right? I've watched a couple of his videos now because of this. I don't really pay attention to him otherwise, and the and he says they're reading the comments. He says he's reading the comments, and that's where the information's coming from. And he's like, this is a discourse and all of this. So, I mean, but he's got thousands and thousands of comments. So, like, yeah, he probably has a team behind him helping him out with that. Which is why I tell everybody, go onto his stuff and start brigading it with the Donbass War. He hasn't talked about the Donbass War yet. And my opinion on this whole issue is that the Donbass War is where all things pivot. Because the Donbass War is what pivots the conversation from Putin is the aggressor to the United States is the aggressor, right? Which, when you're talking about these kinds of wars and these kinds of power politics, right? Who the aggressor is very important, right? It's just like a fist fight. Like if you watch a fist fight, who's the aggressor? That's very important. Like if you're a judge presiding over a case, you want to know who the aggressor is. And it's very different, right? Like if someone's defending themselves against an aggressor, that matters. Like that's key information. That's crucial information. And right now, the West is painting itself as this innocent victim. And I agree with the head of the CIA, William Burns, that no, what we have done is foment a war. Like, we're the aggressors. And so I don't know why agreeing with the director of the CIA means that we get banned, but that's what seems to be happening, right? But I think this is my new initiative. I'm just not going to use any sources that are not American. Because we have enough now. Like, there's enough American sources. Like, and we can literally be like, but the CIA says, like the head director of the CIA, while he was the ambassador to Russia, said this. Like, are we just supposed to ignore this? Seems like he's an important guy. Seems like an important figure. Putin will be in a situation to have to centrally plan a bit. Yeah, I think that's right. I think he's going to have to nationalize things just because he's not going to have another option, right? Like they're just going to nationalize stuff because they won't have another choice. I find it so funny that we have a figure like Trudeau, Putin, and Biden, the right wing, are like, they're bringing communism to your doorstep. Everything that is wrong is communism. We need more capitalism. Yeah. Putin will be in a position to kiss the Chinese ring. Yeah. He won't view it that way, of course, but the tightening of the alliance between Russia and China, and like that's why what the West is doing is so self-destructive. I love you, buddy. You're a good boy. Like what the Russians are doing, or sorry, what the Americans are doing is so self-destructive. Like it's pulling forces in the global South who were not necessarily aligned with one another or in allegiance with one another to start really considering that in a serious way. Like, if you're in China, like if you're the central planners of the Chinese government, right? And if you're in politics in India, right? Like, you're not going to fall for this Western propaganda bullshit. Like, you're not going to pay any attention to that. You want to know what happened, and you want to know what's serious, and you want to know what's real, and you're going to have people whose job it is to actually look at the situation and tell you the truth, because you want to make decisions based on what's real. And if they come back, like if the advisors to the leaders of India come back and say, yeah, the Americans with NATO funded Nazis to overthrow the Ukrainian government and then start attacking Russians in the Donbass region, you're going to go, how much do we really want to align ourselves with these Americans, even as the Americans are helping us sort of counterbalance this Chinese, what we as the Indians perceive as a rising Chinese threat? How much do we really want to tie our wagon to that star while these guys are turning around and actually funding straight up Nazis, like to do very serious shit, like a coup in Ukraine to overthrow the Ukrainian government and then start a war in the Donbass region against Russia. That's massive. That's a major world event, and the fact that nobody knew about it as well, and nobody still knows about it, right? Like it's a major world event, and an enormous propaganda victory. And so, but what it's doing is it's chasing all of those figures, and people like Saudi Arabia. Incidentally, I've seen reports saying that Saudi Arabia isn't taking calls with Biden. Like Saudi Arabia is literally saying, "Whoop, maybe not." Like, and you've got this upcoming situation going on with Putin has invited China, India, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others. There's others in that conversation as well, to Moscow in August to have an anti-fascist conference, right? Like, this is the beginning of like a larger trade agreement for sure. Like Putin is going to have conversations with these guys and be like, look, like you see what these Americans are doing. Like you understand what they're up to, right? Like how long until they turn against you? And Saudi Arabia, I think, sees it as clear as day, right? Saudi Arabia, man, if you like, they're evil, like they're Machiavellianly like evil for sure, but they're geniuses. Like politically speaking, like if this was a board game, right, and or like a video game, and each country had their pluses and negatives and what benefit do they get? Saudi Arabia's benefit would just be like these guys are political geniuses. Like they are always on the right side of power. Maybe not the right side of like the moral history or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, Saudi Arabia must have some serious spy game by now. Information up the wazoo. They're just always on the right side of power, you know? And I think a lot of it is that they don't seem to be particularly ideologically driven. That they very much are just like, this is where the money is, this is where the power lies, we're going to go in that direction. And they don't get hung, like the Americans are hung up on their ideology, like really, and their ideology of not only neoliberal economics, even though Biden is standing up and saying trickle down economics doesn't work. Well, they keep acting that way, so who cares what they say, right? But also this ideology of manifest destiny, that they have to spread democracy, like the NED exists, like this kind of stuff, right? And so this idea and the idea that we can like overthrow governments and put in a liberal democracy, and that liberal democracy, like this is the way that we'll bring peace, right? Like it's failing in significant ways, and as it fails, as the Americans double down on it, right? Other nations are starting to look at them and starting to ask themselves, hey, isn't this scary as shit? This is the scariest shit ever, right? Like we're witnessing the reformation and the reintegration of Nazis, like, and that's being funded by the United States. Like I think that that's serious, and I think that the rest of the world, like the global South, what's called the global South, likely takes that very seriously. Far more seriously than we do, obviously. And like, I just don't think they're going to, like, as they move forward, I don't think they're going to view the United States as a viable partner, right? Like, I would be very much of the opinion that, like, yeah, you can be over there, bud. Like, you can be over there. Like, maybe we'll sell you like copper or something. But at this stage in the game, like, yeah, we'll sell you copper, and then you're going to use that copper in your Nazi war machine, right? Like, maybe not. Maybe not. Saudi Arabia is trying to do more modernizational society, whether that's Western driven or not, or is up to debate. I am more or less of the opinion that what you see happening in Saudi Arabia in terms of their, like, the largest solar panel fields in the world are in Saudi Arabia, right? Like, Saudi Arabia saw the writing on the wall in regards to peak oil and the decline of oil and the fossil fuel stuff and climate change and all this shit. It saw the writing on the wall in the fucking 70s and 80s. Like, while Carter was putting up solar panels on the White House that Bush then turned around and removed, right? Saudi Arabia was like, no, solar panels. Like, obviously, like, all we've got here in Saudi Arabia is like fields of deserts, like big sun, right? They've got the largest solar panel fields in the world, and a lot of that is coming from China, who produces more solar panels than the United States has annually. And so, like, and I think that a lot of the, like, social modernization that's happening in Saudi Arabia is just the power structure. Like, they're still fucking like a monarchy. Like, they're still kings and shit. Like, it's not a democracy. Like, they're still fucking like literally like a monarchical system. And and I think that they are just responding to what the populace wants. Right? That there is like a feminist movement, and there is like a kind of upsurgence of like identity politics, and they're just not fighting it. They're just being like, yeah, okay, because what do they care about? They care about power, right? That's the backbone of their whole thing, right? Literally, they're an oil producing nation. They produce power, and now they're taking their power and they're shifting it into renewable resources as they can, solar panels and the like, right? Because they understand that their position in the world is based exclusively on power. And so they don't fuck around. Like, they don't fuck around. Like, power is what they want. They want power. And I'm, like, you ask yourself, like, what's up with the genocide in Yemen? Like, what is up with the genocide in Yemen? Like, what's the story there? And I am more or less of the opinion that this is the Saudi Arabians saying to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is their biggest threat. It, like, the Muslim Brotherhood is without a doubt the biggest threat in Saudi Arabia for sure. And the Yemeni genocide is the Saudi Arabian princes saying, do not try to overthrow us. We are not fucking around. And they're not. They're not at all. And they use Yemen as an example to say to the Muslim Brotherhood, look, we're playing hardball here, bud. Like, we're playing fucking hardball here. And, like, don't fool yourself. Like, when Egypt overthrew its government in 2008, I believe it was. My brain is saying 4, but I think it was 8. They put together an election, and who won? The Muslim Brotherhood. And it wasn't close, right? That tells you that these guys are organized and ready to go. So of course they won that election, so they got overthrew immediately by a CIA-backed coup, right? Like, so the Muslim Brotherhood didn't go away. Right? The Muslim Brotherhood didn't just vanish, right? They're still there. So, who's the leaders of the opposition? Who's the largest political force that exists within Egypt, certainly, and probably right next door, Saudi Arabia? The Muslim Brotherhood. You got to keep those guys under control. As well, Saudi Arabia is a retro state. Once fossil fuels disappear as a commodity, their relevance will be extremely diminished. That's why they're transitioning into fossil fuels. And also, I am of the belief that Saudi Arabia is positioning itself as a corridor, a country that is going to be crucially important to the economic interests of China, right? So Saudi Arabia, bibbidi bobbidi boo, right? China wants to build the Belt and Road Initiative, right? It's building into Afghanistan, all this kind of stuff. It wants to build it into Iran. It wants to get it into Iraq, right? But if it can't, then it's going to build a rail underneath the Persian Gulf, right? It'll absolutely do that. It'll go from Tehran down here to Riyadh. And they'll build underneath the Persian Gulf, right? Into Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia solves a huge problem for China, right? That problem is how do we get the Belt and Road Initiative into Africa? Africa is super important in this conversation for the Chinese, right? How do we get Africa on this? How do we get Africa online? This is an enormous power source for China. This is an enormous ally. Someone that they could, like, huge crazy shit can happen if China starts lifting Africa up and starts getting Africa to be able to compete on the world stage. And if Africa views China as a peer and as a partner to push back against, traditional enemies, like, enormously important. So Saudi Arabia plays a huge role here, right? China doesn't want to continue trading on the sea because that's very easy for the Americans to interfere with, which they've stated they want to do explicitly. So if they have to sidestep Iraq, well, at least they can go from Shiraz into Radan and build a rail under here. Like, that's possible, right? They could even start doing shit just along here and start getting into Kuwait, perhaps, right? Do tiny little things if they have to sidestep Iraq. But the Chinese are looking at the long game and they're thinking, well, the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan. It's likely they're going to pull out of Iraq eventually, right? In some regard, and we'll be able to get a rail into Baghdad. So we'll be able to get a rail into Riyadh. It's extremely likely a rail is going to get into Riyadh. Well, here's the problem. How do they get a rail from through this section? Because here's Israel. No way is Israel going to let a rail through its territory. Just 0%. That is not going to happen, right? So what are they doing? They're building a city right here called Neom, right? Which means new future, right? Very symbolic, and it's like a tech city, right? So they're building it right here. Well, what do you think it's for? Right? They're building the city right here so that the Chinese can get a rail from Riyadh to here, and then right over, just build it right over here, doink, doink, through the Gulf of Aqaba, right? Or perhaps down in here, right? Although they don't really want to mess with the Suez Canal too badly, right? So just doop, right over here, get it into Cairo, get it into the Suez Canal. And once the rail is connected to the Suez Canal in Cairo, right? Like, and let me be extremely clear about everything I just said there about the Belt and Road Initiative and Saudi Arabia and the rail and all of that kind of stuff. I don't have a source document on any of that. I don't have a document that's saying the Saudis are saying this and the Chinese are saying this and this is their plan and here's what it is. But I think they would all be nuts not to do it. Like, you'd have to be nuts, right? To be like, no, we're not going to build a rail into Riyadh and then use that to build a rail into Cairo. Nah. Like, obviously that's their plan. And by doing this, by using Saudi Arabia in this way, the Chinese can push into Africa, where they're already building rail off the coasts, by the way. Like, they're already building rails all off the coast and everything. And so Saudi Arabia then becomes an absolutely crucial partner for China and its interests in Africa, right? And so while that's true that Saudi Arabia is going to diminish in terms of its fossil fuel dependence, it's shifting away from it's already shifted away from fossil fuels. Like, it's already done that. It's shifting away from fossil fuels. It's getting into the renewable game. It's putting solar panels everywhere. It's building crucial trade infrastructure so that every single time the Chinese want to get any goods through Riyadh, through Neom, and into Africa, they'll take 0.00001% of a penny. And there's going to be so much trade that happens between these two. Saudi Arabia is essentially going to turn into a middleman, right? It's essentially just going to be a middleman who's just facilitating trade between these two and creating a secure trade route. And it's going to be completely in the interests of the Chinese to have stability in this region. And so the Chinese are going to turn a blind eye to whatever Saudi Arabia needs to do in order to assert its dominance and power, right? And they're going to fucking build this shit out of Africa. Right? Like, Saudi Arabia is not, it doesn't want to keep propping this crazy shit up. It concluded years ago, fucking years ago, it came to the conclusion that this is nuts. Like, they've been completely operating along that line. And so when Putin stands up and says, hey, we're going to get China and India and Saudi Arabia, we're going to get Pakistan, I think, is in on this. We're going to get all these guys in the same room together, right? And we're going to have a talk. And we're going to come to formal agreements. And we're going to sign documents. This is a fucking major world event. A major world event. And the idea that Saudi Arabia, India, and China could come to any formal agreement with one another that excludes the West is fucking enormous. Fucking enormous. One of the most significant moments in world politics in recent memory. So, like, shit is happening, man. Shit is happening. The question is, how much damage is the United States willing to do? Like, that's the real question. How much damage is the United States willing to do in this crazed, bloodlust-fueled war of aggression that it is? It's clearly willing to sacrifice its own populace. It's clearly willing to sacrifice the people of Ukraine. Like, it's obviously willing to sacrifice all of this, and also, like, and the justification that people are falling for. Sure, I'm spending 20% more at the pump, but it's worth it. It's worth it if it means we stick it to Putin. It's worth it if the Ukrainians are better for it. So, like, we're literally accepting these skyrocketing gas prices with this overt, just stupid pledge of allegiance to a neo-Nazi state. Like, how is Saudi Arabia doing for tech? I assume they were heavy into that. Yeah. No, they see that that's the way. Like, that's the way forward. I know, buddy. I know. Like, more than anybody else, like, Saudi Arabia has pivoted in a very clear-minded way. Like, that's how I would say it when it comes to Saudi Arabia's politics and the way that it operates. It's been very clear-minded. Just straight up, what's the power? How do we keep power? Power. And like, both literally and figuratively. And the way that they operate is just no bullshit, none of that, just power. And so that's what they're up to. Just buy a Tesla. It's okay if gas is $15 a gallon. Yeah, some rich cocksucker coming down on like a chariot. Just buy a Tesla. Like, I'd buy into that if there was actually, like, a government intervention. Like, if the government was getting involved and being like, okay, like, we need to transition your fossil fuel vehicle into a Tesla vehicle, into an electric vehicle. We're actually going to facilitate this. Some of that does exist. Like, I've seen some of that in, like, New Brunswick, for example. They've done a bit of that, right? But that's not how the United States operates, right? It's always just let the free market decide, let chaos reign. Right? If you suffer, well, that's just the market, right? And as we've said, if you're rich, you're good, and if you're poor, it's your fault, and you just need to bootstrap and all that kind of stuff. And like, we're starting to see what that means, right? Like, and we're starting to see, like, the American populace is going to fucking eat it, huge, like, huge. The American populace is going to just eat a massive dick sandwich, right? And the whole time it's happening, They're going to get fed this line of just like, oh, it's for the war effort. So everybody's got to like tuck in, right? It's like, for the war effort we created, says the CIA director William Burns. Like, we're so fucking stupid. Like, and we know that we're like, and what makes it extra stupid, right, is that we've done this song and dance before, right? We did this with the Iraq War already once before. Like, this isn't new, right? It's the same hysteria. It's the same bullshit. It's the same steps, right? The question is, to what degree are we willing to pursue this line? And like with Iraq, we stepped down in regards to war rhetoric, but if you live in the Middle East, like, it didn't end, right? We just kind of forgot. Like, we just kind of went, well, what are you going to do? Break it, you bought it, right? That's what we did here in the West, right? Well, the fucking people in the Middle East didn't think you break it, you bought it, right? They don't view us as, like, liberators. They don't view us as people who went in there and helped them, right? Like, if Bush had gone in there and done that crazy shit and then actually attempted to, like, withdraw, like, create a disentangling platform or any of that kind of stuff and actually get out of the region, you know, okay, that'd be one thing. But that's not what they did. Like, they built the largest military base in history fucking in the United States in Baghdad. Like, from a biblical position, they, like, rebuilt Babylon, for God's sakes. Like, if you want to get, like, really weird about it. Like, it's crazy what we're doing. Like, it's crazy what we're doing. And the more you learn about it, the crazier it gets. It's just insane. And all of it is just so that the United States can assert itself as, like, I'm the best. It's literally, it all does boil down to just like an ape going, ugh. That's it. That's United States foreign policy, just writ large. It's just a big fucking gorilla going, oh, 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 oh. That's it. And it's for fucking nothing. It's for fucking nothing at all. And our intense short-sightedness, and it's an intense short-sightedness. Like, we don't have the capacity or the ability to see further than a quarter. Like, maybe there are some people in the conversation that are like, we can plan annually, right? And like, and maybe there's some banker and some banking institutions, but like, this idea that there's like, from Watchmen, there's like this Ozymandias type figure who's like looking at all the media and then making plans that way and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's, if that were the case, then like the 2014 financial crash would have never happened. These guys don't know what they're doing. They don't have control of it. And moreover, they don't care to. And they keep telling us, let the free market decide. Oh, here you go. Eric's saying, can we go through the article? Sure. I was kind of getting into more geopolitics. Because this is gonna form up in really interesting ways. Like, really, really interesting ways. You're seeing, like, Maduro, for example. Biden has said he wants to buy oil from Venezuela in response, and Maduro's response has been, get fucked. Right? Like, the Americans are so fucking fucked, man. If you are here in Toronto, March 17th, that's Thursday, March 17th, 11 a.m., come to Jarvis Street, Bloor and Jarvis. We're in front of the Rogers building, right? We're protesting at Rogers Media because they own or control City TV and other media outlets. They are not reporting the truth. Correlation between inadequate disability and social services benefits and homeless. Rogers is being ableist in their publishing political propaganda and spin and not reporting the truth. Like, this isn't explicitly because of the Ukrainian situation, but yeah, it plays. And I'm gonna take a bathroom break. Let's draw the number. I'm picking a 10. I'll be right back.
Here we go for today's number. It's March 11, 2022. 10 balls. Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the numbers. Pick a number. Today's number is 6.
We got a 6. We got a 6. Who got it? I know you missed it, Mocked. Hey, Harry and Barnabas. Look at that. Congratulations, guys. Ding, 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 ding. Yep. Go buy that lottery ticket. Go do that thing. Verb the noun. If there's the thing that you've always wanted to do, if there's the thing that you've been thinking about doing and you haven't done it, well, now you've got the energy of David Lynch. Let it carry you into your life. Yeah, big bucks, no whammies. Exactly. Exactly, Barnabas. Today's your day, bud. Today's your day. All right. You let me I know, right? It's all me. It's all me. All right, let's go through this. Okay, I know, buddy, I know. This is from Boston Review, Bad Economics, How Microeconomic Reasoning Took Over the Very Institutions of American Governments by Simon Torresinta. What do you got? Thinking Like an Economist, How Efficiency Replaced Equality in the U.S. Public Policy. This is just selling books. Okay, those who can do science, the economist Paul Samuelson once remarked. Those who can't, prattle on about methodology. Until fairly recently, this seemed to be the dominant attitude among mainstream economists. But a sea change came when the global financial system began to unravel in 2007. In the decade and a half since, painful years of sluggish recovery, stagnant real wages, yawning inequality, and populist upheaval, reflexive talk has exploded. Why was the crash not widely predicted? Was the efficient market hypothesis to blame? Have lessons from the Great Depression been forgotten? And why are core questions about finance, power, inequality, and capitalism still largely missing from Economics 101? The most visible debates have centered on macroeconomics, the study of the gross features of the economy as a whole. At stake are some of the field's bedrock concerns: the power of public spending and money creation, the role of banking and the risks of complex financial instruments, the relationship between employment, wages, inflation, and interest rates, and the nature and necessity of growth. Given the role macro models play in central banking and public spending, these are not merely academic questions, but urgent matters of public policy, from pandemic response to Build Back Better and the new inflation wars. Yet all this macroeconomic Sturm und Drang has obscured the basic unity of microeconomic methods employed by the vast majority of working economists today, whether in the academy, government, or industry. Crack open a best-selling introductory textbook like Harvard professor N. Gregory Mankiw's Principles of Economics, now in its 9th edition, and the first principles one encounters are not the fundamental of growth or employment, but rather opportunity cost, marginal decision-making, the role of incentives, the gains from trade, and the efficiency of market allocations. All microeconomic ideas. Far more than any core tenets of macroeconomic theory, it is this core bundle of microeconomic principles that defines and unites the modern economic profession. It is also what distinguishes mainstream methods, sometimes called neoclassical, from the various heterodoxies, Marxist, Austrian, post-Keynesian, ecological, that most academic economists studiously ignore. Although some of its roots stretch back centuries, microeconomics as we know of it was born in the 1930s and 40s. when a starkly formalist and deductive approach to modeling market behavior gradually, but firmly, displaced its historicist and institutionalist rivals in the Anglo-American profession. During World War II, scores of economists were recruited to apply optimization models to wartime planning, and in the post-war era, this shift was further entrenched by the global hegemony of intensely mathematized techniques, a trend pioneered by Samuelson himself. This revolution has proven exceptionally durable, far more, in fact, than the Keynesian revolution in macroeconomics that initially unfolded around the same time. Given the outsized influence of economic thinking in modern life, it is odd that these microeconomic foundations have largely escaped public scrutiny. 3 recent books help set the record straight. Each freely courts Samuelson's scorn, showing how microeconomic methodology structures are not only the theory and practice of economics, but the very institutions of American governance. In the face of the consecrating disasters of the present, economics will have to be remade, these authors suggest, from the inside out. For an accessible worldview, historian Robert Skidelsky's What's Wrong with Economics? A Primer for the Perplexed is the best place to start. An esteemed biographer of John Maynard Keynes, Skidelsky has long been a sharp observer of the economic scene and played an important role in reviving Keynesian ideas over the last decade. Yet in contrast to the previous work like Money and Government, which sought to reimagine the macroeconomic paradigm, this book plunges into microeconomic foundations. Though more knowing readers will find little here that is original or surprising, the virtue of the book lies in its trenchant and highly readable synthesis of material not often brought together in one place. It should be required reading for anyone new to the field, students and general readers alike. Skidelsky's targets can be grouped into 3 main features of contemporary economic thinking: its intense mathematization, its caricatured portrait of human psychology, and its isolation from the other social sciences. Some economists, Skidelsky concedes, may object that he presents a caricature of his own. They are right, in one sense. He pays more attention to economic theory than economic practice, which has changed significantly over the last few decades. On the other hand, Skidelsky retorts, it is the caricature which rules the textbooks, and the textbooks matter. They function in particular as instruments of indoctrination. Students might better resist the slide into ideology, Skidelsky mischievously suggests, if they pressed their university lecturers to defend the toy models their books throw at them. Consider the first issue of excessive reliance on math. Critiques in this direction are at least a century old, but Skidelsky, following Philip Mirowski, among others, finds a unifying theme. Economics suffers from a bad case of physics envy. To first approximation, the fundamental technique of modern economic thinking is to generate highly simplified models of phenomena of interest, reducing the tremendous complexity of actually existing economies to precise and quantifiable mathematical formulism, just as physicists do for the natural world. As this technique took off in the 20th century, a great deal of economic theory became even less like physics and more like pure math. The goal was to formulate theorems, the more surprising the better, and, most important, to prove them, reasoning by a chain of unassailable logical consequences from a few basic assumptions, just as a mathematician might prove a theorem in geometry or a number theory. One of the crowning achievements of this axiomatic approach is the modern theory of general equilibrium, developed by Kenneth Arrow, Gerard Debreu, and Lionel Mackenzie in the 1950s, which demonstrates how a market economy, under ideal conditions, achieves the perfect allocation of resources. Just as a mathematician had their fundamental theorem of algebra, mid-century economics developed their own fundamental theorem of welfare economies. Not all economic models are this abstract. Others are closer to the ground, examining the behavior of a firm under particular price and supply constraints. say, or individuals in a labor market. Either way, Skidelsky demonstrates, economic theorizing has often cared less about the performance of the model than the tightness of its logic, even formal elegance. Sociologically speaking, this is partially because mathematization has doubled as a sorting mechanism. In order to decide who gets a job or tenure, just pick the candidate doing the most sophisticated mathematics. A model might begin with a radically untenable assumptions, but that is no point against it so long as it is logically consistent, aesthetically pleasing in its simplicity, and makes accurate predictions, as Milton Friedman argued in his famous paper on the mythology of positive economies. The purchase on reality, the argument goes, can always be improved through later revisions. For Skidelsky, the fundamental problem with this methodology is that because it imitates physical explanations of the natural world, it falsely assumes that law-like regularities also govern the social world. Or at least that models assuming such regularity are good enough. On these issues, Skidelsky curiously overlooks Mary Morgan's valuable 2012 study, The World in the Model: How Economists Work and Think. Moreover, the ideal assumptions of economic models often do a great deal of subtle ideological work by reinforcing laissez-faire fundamentalism and conflating the descriptive and predictive uses of models with their prescriptive role in public policy. As economist Frank Knight once put it, equilibrium can be deduced only under assumptions so heroic they bear little resemblance to reality at all. Yet, when real-world conditions depart from these assumptions, many economists act as though it's the world that's to blame, not the model. For them, the point is that markets ought largely to be left alone, or even created in domains where they do not already exist, so as to bring the world more in line with the model, rather than the model more in line with the world. This objection is hardly new, of course. Economists typically retort that equilibrium functions as a useful heuristic, or that some researchers are just better than others, less likely to slide into ideology, more likely to use models judiciously. Bad economists, of course, do bad economics, but one should not confuse a complaint about quality with a complaint about methodology. Paul Krugman intoned in his 1998 essay, "Two cheers for formalism." What this argument misses is that the stakes of bad economics are often far higher than bad physics. Being wrong about gravitational waves may cost you tenure, but being wrong about the minimum wage might condemn tens of millions to poverty. Formalism per se might not always be a problem, though it can be when it crowds out other approaches, but the outsized social and political influence it has certainly is. Those invested in the logical rigor of equilibrium may, and many do, seek to make the world behave more like the equation, by hook or by crook. Given these stakes, Skidelsky thinks explicit methodology reflection, far from the prattle Samuelson condemns, is necessary to guard against dangerous overreach and ideological distortion. The authority of economics derives in no small measure from its opacity, Skidelsky writes. In equilibrium, he asks, a necessary property of a market system, a benchmark, a logical requirement for quantitative prediction, or a mathematical ideal, beautiful to behold but of little practical relevance? Even when they attempt to be transparent, textbooks and working economists often offer very different answers. In light of the stranglehold economics has on public policy, the implications of this central ambiguity are not solely philosophical. They are also political. The picture is not much rosier, Skidelsky thinks, within more applied domains of microeconomics. Although he doesn't mention it, this category accounts for the vast majority of research by academic economists today. Theory for its own sake is now mostly relegated to textbooks rather than professional journals. The trouble is that the economy as a whole, and even many smaller segments of it, cannot be subjected to the kind of experimental isolation undertaken in the physical sciences. Economic propositions are thus not open to the same degree of falsification as physical ones. Despite the sophisticated statistical tools of modern econometrics, try as they might to parse correlation from cause. Even when the need for theory revision is conceded, it is pursued very incrementally, in the most conservative way possible. With the lapse of time, the qualifications, the restrictions, and the exceptions have piled up. The heterodox economist Pio Straffa once put it, until they have eaten up, if not all, certainly the greater part of the theory. Yet, with manifest failures explained away as minor frictions in the model, Skidelsky observes, the core theory is protected from attack. Economics, in other words, is far too fond of its cycles. It's long overdue for revolution. What's more, to the extent that robust empirical findings have emerged in recent decades, the results are often at odds with the predictions of microeconomic theory. The minimum wage is a case in point. Abstract equilibrium models predict that higher minimums increase unemployment. When empirical work began questioning this presumption, the outrage from some economists was severe. The inverse relationship between quantity demanded and price is the core proposition in economic science. Nobel laureate James Buchanan thundered in the Wall Street Journal in '96. Just as no physicist would claim that water runs uphill, no self-respecting economist would claim that increases in the minimum wage increase employment. Yet in the decades since, empirical research has consistently failed to find evidence for this supposedly self-evident relationship. How should we make sense of this divergence between theory and reality? Skidelsky thinks we ought to conclude there are no laws of economics valid at all times and places. At best, theories can lead approximately reliable predictions over such time periods as other things stay the same. This may be the case in very special and limited circumstances, but it cannot be true over any long period or at any high level of generality. Okay, buddy, you're coming up. You're coming up. Economics pug, economics pug, economics pug. It's an economics pug. He's an economics pug. He's gonna bite my hand. He's just playing. He's an economics pug. I know, right? Economics pug. The second main target of What's Wrong with Economics will be more familiar to general readers. The field's thoroughgoing methodological individualism and its highly stylized utility-maximizing caricature of Homo economicus. Economists pride themselves on the artificiality of this construct, which they justify by its usefulness for modeling. In the definition of Nobel laureate Thomas Sargent, a person is merely a constrained, intertemporal, stochastic optimization problem. Oh my fucking God. For Skidelsky, critical problems arise when we ask whether this unlovely creature is simply a theoretical tool, or rather an ideal form to which flesh and blood mortals should aspire. As with equilibrium, textbooks and many professional economists toggle between contradictory answers. Nor has the puzzle been resolved by the rise of behavioral economics, despite its ingenious psychological experiments, demonstrating how human rationality is bounded by a variety of cognitive biases. Talk of love aversion and the sunk cost fallacy can still serve to reify a Platonic ideal of rational behavior. For Skidelsky, this is a dangerous delusion, since it suggests we can calculate our way out of hard decisions, or even deduce our way out of disagreement once and for all. In reality, there is no escape from moral choices. These deep methodological issues do not render economic knowledge utterly useless, Skidelsky suggests, but they do mean economics as we know it may have to be thrown out. To what worlds does the study of economics add unique value, he asks. To what worlds does it add about the same amount of value as do other social sciences? And to what worlds does it add no value at all, and even detract from it? Skidelsky clearly believes the third case is true in many worlds of public life. We should instead take a more provisional, open, and flexible attitude toward economic phenomena and treat economics as just another social science, rather than one supposedly purified of uncertainty by its logical prowess. Concretely, this means we should abandon dreams of an immaculate science of economic life and stop deferring to those who claim to speak in its name. More abstractly, in place of a discipline that neglects the mesoeconomic level, the institutions, firms, unions, banking systems, social movements, digital platforms, states, and other social entities that shape our behavior, Skidelsky proposes an approach which is more modest in its epistemology and richer in its ontology. This brings us to Skidelsky's third critique. Economics has walled itself off from sociology, political sciences, ethics, and history, to its detriment and ours. Skidelsky's arguments here take inspiration from what he sees as a lost and richer past of political economy. Engaging sociology, the insights of Max Weber say, and older forms of economic history would make space, he argues, for more context-specific economic analysis, as well as a methodological holism that systematically factors in the emergent properties of social institutions. Reviving required graduate courses in the history of economic thought would expose students to radically different methodologies. Finally, more serious engagement with ethics would reorient economics away from the satisfaction of theoretical limitless individual wants to the end of absolute poverty and disease. The radical modesty, transparency, and pluralism Skidelsky calls for would surely be welcome. But in a world where microeconomic models are now being coded into the algorithms that govern more and more of our social and economic life, just how likely is that these virtues are forthcoming? On this point, British economists Diane Coyle's Cogs and Monsters, What Economics Is and What It Should Be, offers a more realistic assessment. How much longer is this, dude? This is huge. This is huge. Dude, this is huge. I'm going to spend the whole rest of my time reading this. I'm good. I think I'm good, bud. That's like a lot. But like, yeah, like I'm with this Skidelsky guy. Like what we're doing is total bullshit, right? We're totally bullshit. It's and in obvious ways. Like take the minimum wage argument, right? Like the minimum wage argument by these economists, if you want to call them that, they're just hacks, is like, yeah, if you raise the minimum wage, then businesses won't be able to afford more people and unemployment will actually go up. Yeah. Because they're stupid and they don't know anything about the world and they think in these really reductive, ridiculous ways. They don't understand that economies are a circle, right? That if you raise the minimum wage, right, the heterodoxy is that, oh, businesses won't be able to afford it. But who pays the businesses? Where is the business getting their money from? They get their money from the people who have just had their wages increased, right? So if you're offering a service that's worth a damn at all, that means that you should be getting more money because everybody else has money, right? So it's this insistence that economics starts at the rich and then trickles down, right? That has held us back so horribly when economics starts with the mass of people, right? If the mass of people are in a bad position, your economy is in a bad position. And if you don't want to accept that, then you're not really an economist. You're just a priest of your weird little ideology. Like, that's really where we're at. General equilibrium is fine if people wouldn't die and could exist with no resources, since market deny resources to 20% of the people. Well, and I'm actually not opposed to the concept of creating like a mathematical model of how an economy functions. Like, video games have been trying to do this the whole fucking time. And steadily, as we move forward, are like starting to like slice into it more and more, right? They're starting to create a model that is actually closer to what an economy actually is, steadily. We're not even close to it. Like, we're not there yet. But this ridiculous idea that economists here in North America hold on to. Sorry, guys, 1 second. Milo, buddy. No more, okay? No more. You've had plenty of peanut butter and treats, okay? You're just whining for nothing. You're a good boy. I love you. You're a good boy. He's just sitting over here whining. Oy. Like, if that's what you're espousing, then you're out to lunch completely. So, like, literally, you're starting by saying, like, if I was to put it in a mathematical form, it's like you're saying we need to have the number is 30, right? And that's the number that must be met. And so all of your formulas and equations and all of that have to be 30. Like, that's the answer. So you've created your conclusion. You've started with your conclusion. And all of your models and formula have to meet that conclusion. And if it doesn't meet that conclusion, then you have to get rid of them, even if it contravenes reality itself, which is exactly what's occurring. And whereas I think you could create mathematical models. I think you could, but you need to start with people, humanity first, right? That there's the humans. You have the humans. What are the humans doing? How do the humans operate in this, right? And in many ways, like modern economics, this religious ideology that we're all espousing, treats people as either a commodity or like literally as excluded from the model, as like a byproduct. And it's just like, if that's the way you think about it, then you're no economist that's worth a damn whatsoever. Right? If the purpose of economics is not to improve the quality of life for the people who live in the system, then what the fuck is it for? Right? Like, what the fuck is it actually for? The markets are in transition right now. A lot more information to end retail. Why can't I say that word? Retail users in recent years. The slow-moving Wall Street is going to be like crypto, instant settlement, fast and transparent. I don't know if I understand your comment, Methane, honestly. Stephen King much? I mean, I don't. You guys are saying weird things. The people are proving Marx correct, unwittingly, of course. Yeah, of course. No, because Marx was an economist. Like, that's the difference between Marx and the rest of these hacks, right? Is that Marx was an economist who actually had a correct analysis. Like, it isn't difficult to be proven correct if you're correct, right? Like, if 1 + 1 = 2, that should be fairly obvious and observable. And, like, Marx's work is being proven correct largely because it's correct, right? And it's just whether or not Westerners are willing to accept it. And given the bullshit that Westerners are willing to ignore, right? We'll see. Biggest game issue is inflation, level 12. Well, I actually think video games struggle with economics because they don't get that economics. Like, you're going around in the game world and you just find a handful of gold. And it's like, okay, so you have this handful of gold. And then if you spend that gold, it basically vanishes, right? So there's no circle, right? And it doesn't matter how much gold you put in a pile. Like, you literally can have infinite gold on your person and everybody acts exactly the same no matter what. There's no concept of, like, a cyclical economy. And there's no concept of, like, a limit to how much gold you can create that exists in video games. But that is steadily, like, there are games that are starting to confront this idea and starting to come up with a concept of, like, wait a minute, like, if you were walking around with 10 million gold pieces, people would probably notice that, and there would probably be a lot of interest in that, and you could probably, like, develop stuff and create, like, change territory and alter things and create that secular system, right? But you can take a look at video games and see how we don't really understand how economies really work. That, like, yeah, I put my little guy here and he just generates gold pieces, and then I use the gold piece to buy a military guy, right? It's just like not, it's like a cartoonish version of how economics actually works, and we don't really understand it. Like really, like we really, really fundamentally do not understand it. And worst of all are the economists themselves. The part I find so funny is that when you have people like Milton Friedman outright admit if the real world data doesn't fit the model, we should just fit the real world into, yeah, exactly. Like they just admit it. Like it's just brutal. Economists, okay, I got to do something about this dog, guys. Give me a second. Okay, buddy. Jesus Christ. Like you're losing your little puppy mind. Like holy cow. Here you go, buddy. Peanut butter time. Yeah. For my little pug. Yeah. Getting super fat. Yeah, you're super fat. 'Cause you are a pug. Yeah. I remember I took my dog to a vet once. And the vet was like, might want to watch his weight and all that kind of stuff. And it's great. And then I moved to another place and talked to another vet. And I was like, a vet told me I should be worried about his weight. And the guy looked at me and he said, your dog's a pug. That's lost cause. I was just like, yep, okay. He does pretty good, though. The part I find, yeah, exactly. Economists are now essentially cult followers of the Austrian school version of economics, which, like... It like the Austrian school is the worst of all, if you ask me. You want somebody to really concisely dismantle Austrian economics? Go find Mark Blyth. Mark Blyth just absolutely decimates it. Like he's literally like he there was one sentence he said, it was something along the lines of like, yeah, the Austrian school of economics can literally be boiled down to the way to grow your economy is to destroy your economy. Like, and when you actually pause and think about what it is they're arguing for, you really are like, oh yeah, that's true. Like, basically you want to take a working model that's being run by the government, right? So it's being run like, so its costs are low because it's just going to pour in the resources it needs to pour in to make the thing function, right? And then you're dismantling that and selling it to some capitalist who, even if he does exactly the same thing, well, you need to pay for the capitalist. And the capitalist is worthless, provides zero value whatsoever. So even if you erect exactly the same model and have it work in exactly the same way, it has to function worse or be more expensive because you've got to pay for the worthless parasite that sits atop it, right? So Austrian economics just is a failure from the outset, even theoretically. Like, even if they manage to make it more efficient, which, I mean, why would a government run a system if inefficiently? It doesn't make any fucking sense at all. But even if they did manage to find efficiencies or whatever, like at the end of the day, you're paying for them and they're worthless. And even worse than that, if you give them something that they can monopolize and that people need, like healthcare, for example, right? Well, they're completely incentivized to jack prices because you have to buy it, right? So it's like Austrian economics is like fraudulent from the get. It's obviously a bunch of rich psychopaths attempting to convince gullible rubes to let the rich psychopaths run the place. Like, that's obviously what it is. Yeah. Capitalism starts with ideology first. Yeah. Bourgeoisie ownership is the bedrock. Exactly. It's like the assumption, right? You have to have it. That's just natural, right? It's just natural. Just like slavery was natural, right? The slavers argued that slavery was natural, and just the capitalists argue that bourgeoisie ownership is natural, right? Oh yeah, if you try to remove bourgeoisie ownership, then it wouldn't work, because obviously, like, take a look at lobsters. The more I learn economics, the more I made the conclusion that their model proves Karl Marx, and in fact, at some point, I want to do a doctrinal thesis proving Karl Marx. Off you go, bud. See if they let you. The system is there to protect the wealthy of the wealthy. Humanity be damned. Yeah. Well, that's not even part of the equation. Why do Americans get so hurt when another country wants to be communist? Mind your own business. Yeah. Like, if communism fails, then you should just let it fail, right? Like, just let it fail then. Like, if the narrative is that communism fails, well, then just let it, right? Like, why are you so afraid of it? Why do you gotta sanction? Why do you gotta send troops in? Why do you gotta carpet bomb, like we did to Laos and Vietnam and Cambodia? Like, what are you so scared of, right? Like, if communism fails, then just let it. But I want to get my political science doctorate before I start tackling that degree. Oh, wow. Ever spend time on the economics of the EVE Online game? If you're talking about real game economies, there have been papers written on it, I'm sure. Yeah, EVE Online is actually one of those ones that actually does have an economy like this. That people play the game, and you can play the game as like a ship manufacturer, right? Now, what's kind of disturbing about EVE Online is that their economy basically funnels into an inevitable war, right? That everything is about building these big giant battleships that eventually blow up on each other, right? And then the cycle renews itself, right? All of this shit just destroys itself, and then you go out and harvest the resources again, and then the cycle begins anew. And so it's like a war economy. EVE Online is like a war economy. For those of you who don't know, like you play as like as a miner or a harvester in space. It's all about space exploration and building like a space enterprise. And as you go along, you can get quite serious and have like tons of resources, and you can automate tons of shit. And then you take those ships and you actually sell those ships to other players who are doing similar things. And so people end up with gigantic space militaries and space armies and shit like this. And there's nothing else to do with them, so you just blow each other up, right? Like, you don't really exist in a real world with like real world consequences. And so blowing each other up is just like, yeah, what else are you gonna do? And but you take that logic into the real world. You take a look at something like the Ukrainian crisis and how we're funding like Raytheon and all this kind of stuff, and like all of our productivity just gets funneled into this war effort. And but at the end of the day, like unlike EVE Online, when we blow ourselves up, right? Like we're blowing up the user, right? So imagine you're playing EVE Online, and when the space war happened, if your ship blew up, you actually died. Right? That humans are also a commodity in that arrangement, right? And EVE Online doesn't really like account for that, right? That you don't really lose anything, like you don't die as the user. Should loot be taxed on pickup? Taxes generally, like we have a real odd way of looking at taxation, that we think that taxation pays for stuff. And that's not what's actually happening. That taxation exists to ensure to ensure the stabilization of the economy generally, because governments are always creating money, right? Like every time a government releases a budget, it's creating money, right? And so it needs to actually tax back an equivalent amount of money, or else its economy will become unbalanced, right? Like if you had an infinite amount of something, well, then that something has no value. And so the thing that maintains the value of your overall economy is taxes. It's just that we've built a taxation system that punishes most of the populace instead of doing what it should do, which is find pools of dead weight, just like dead capital that's not doing anything, right? Like or tax away from the false part of the economy, right? People trading stocks and bonds. Right? Like that's not the real economy. You're not actually like buying food or building anything meaningful or actually changing anything. You're literally just transferring ownership between capitalists. It's like you could tax that. That would be taxable, right? And I've seen papers. Financial transaction tax, Wikipedia. I'm more or less of the opinion that this is the way to go. Like, a financial transaction tax is a levy on a specific type of financial transaction for a particular purpose. The concept has been most commonly associated with the financial sector, as it's not usually considered to include consumption taxes paid by consumers. The fellow that made this, that really studied this idea, and there's been some implementation of it, interesting. A history of the concept. Come on. There was one writer who I read about. He was of the opinion that you could actually replace all taxation with a financial transaction tax, and it was very convincing, because like, why couldn't you do it that way? Like, why are you taxing people buying like goods and shit? Like, what's that about? That seems really dumb. The only reason you would actually tax goods instead of taxing like financial transactions and things is if you just wanted to make sure that rich people were rich. Like, that's it. I hate it when it jumps down like that. The good thing about Marx is that he hits on all those topics, political economy and all. Yeah, I mean, he wrote a ton. Like, he wrote a ton. The U.S. gets upset because we want to own everything or be the gatekeeper. You can't own private property in a communist system. I mean, there is a distinction between what were the terms that Marx used? It was like private property and I think personal property is what it was, and the distinction between those things, because you do need to delineate like who has the right to use something, right? But the idea is that just because you have the right to use it doesn't mean you own it, and that you can't simply use it for whatever you'd like. That the society should have a say, right? Like, I think about so there's a bunch of empty storefronts right now because of the pandemic and because of all this kind of stuff. And who has the right to move in and do what they want with it? Well, the person that owns the property gets to decide what moves in and for what purpose and all that kind of stuff. It's like, but so the society doesn't really have a say, except in this like weird indirect way where it's like, oh, if we put something in, we don't want it, then we won't buy the service, right? But really, when you pause and think about it, like, if the populace wanted something there, right, and somebody came along and said, hey, I'd like to put this business in, well, the only reason it doesn't happen today is because there's some asshole who owns the property. And he's like, no, I need you, you got to pay me $1 million a month to be there, right? These worthless landlords who are just parasites. Like, it's absolutely brutal. Hey, Ward, how you doing, bud? People can only fathom wants and needs of perhaps at most 200 people in their circles versus corporate analysis of millions of people. Yeah, and I think that's another problem, right? Is that a lot of our systems are designed with this idea that, oh, just like a couple of people will be able to understand what the needs are of the people. When the reality is that people themselves know what they want, right? Like, that you should empower people on an individual level so that they can get access to these markets and so that they can get the thing they want that they know they need, right? Like, we've created a form of slavery to these models by withholding people's access to the market, right? Like, as you have nothing, right? You can't get access to the market, so what do you have to do? You got to sell yourself, right? And of course, what do most people get when they sell themselves to the market? Food and shelter, right? And these days it's getting to be not even that. 20 yards of linen equals 1 coat. Karl Marx, chapter 1 of Das Kapital. Because capital needs to expand and accumulate into fewer and fewer hands, yeah. Well, a loss of realism is what makes a game or it be a simulation. Yeah, some people are fascinated by the idea of simulations. There's one fellow, I forget his name offhand, but he is actually creating outright video game models of an economy, right? And he's the guy that really, I wish I could remember his name offhand, but he was the guy that was creating this idea of like, it's got to be a circle. Like, it's got to be a circle. If it doesn't work as a circle, then it's not an economy. Pugs are the saddest, most useless creatures ever. Yeah, sorry, you're not gonna. I'm not gonna correct you on that. Like, they are basically a furry potato with legs and a mouth. For sure. But, like, they're lovely. Like, they're lovely. Like, their usefulness is not what you want from them. You don't want them to be useful. You want them to be lovely. Right? A flower doesn't necessarily do a job, but we love them all the same. But my innovation, capital is innovate. Friedrich von Hayek, Ludwig von Mises, along with Milton Friedman, the Chicago School, all Austrian school whack jobs are the Mount Rushmore of neoliberal economic loons. Yeah. Like, and look, the Austrian shit, it doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work on the face of it. Like, as long as you exclude the needs of people, and as long, like, and it's writ large in the minimum wage conversation. I actually think that the minimum wage conversation has been the most detrimental to these Austrians, to really reveal them as the hacks that they actually are. Because, like, it's basic reason. If you are a business and your minimum wage goes up, yeah, sure, the amount that you need to pay goes up. And then that's where they stop. And they're just like, oh, it's a failure. So these people have money. And these people are your customers. And everybody in the society just got a pay raise. So everybody in the society has more money. So if you're producing any business or good or service that is of any value to anyone, that means more people are going to be able to walk through your door. That means you're going to get more business, which means you're going to get more money, which means you're going to be able to hire more people, right? So much for the unemployment thing going apart. But as long as you just ignore, like, people really do think that I pay wages and that goes into a black hole, right? And if you think that way, then you can't be an economist. Like, you just can't, right? You pay wages. Those wages pay goods and services. Like, it's like these hacks when they were walking around being like, we're the job creators. You can't tax us. We're the job creators. It's like, no, you're not. Customers are job creators, right? Like, it doesn't matter how super rich you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much money gets funneled into the good or the service. It doesn't matter how big your structure is. It doesn't matter. If no one walks in the door and buys your shit, you don't have a business, right? Like, that's just basic, right? And the highest level of economics for the last 40 years has just ignored that. It just doesn't exist in our consciousness. That's right. I'm a 200 bajillionaire, and I create a giant enterprise and a huge business, and it doesn't matter if people use it. Yeah, it fucking matters if people use it. Like, if people don't walk in the door and actually buy the good or the service that you're providing, then you don't have a business, right? And so, and then you turn around and tell me that if the people who are actually buying your goods get more money as a baseline, because we all agree that that's a good idea, that that's going to collapse your model. No, it won't. Like, and we've gone through here in Canada now several minimum wage increases, and I am yet to find the business owner that actually says it's been a problem, right? Like, business owners, when they actually go through the minimum wage increase, it's like, oh, that went up a little bit, but oh, I'm getting more money. That's the experience of these guys. And why are they getting more money? Because more people have money, right? Like, so this concept that we'll just give more money to the billionaires and then they'll create giant businesses and everything will be super good, it just fails. Like, objectively, it doesn't work that way. And this is the model. This is the model that we're all operating on. It's not going to help me achieve what I want to do. My goal is to demonstrate how conservatives continuously morph into new ideology but remain fundamental to same, which leads to fascism, and how libertarian are the descendant of Nazism, and how neoliberalism order is crowning achievement of those. That's a very big concept, dude. That's huge. There are some aspect I could use Karl Marx, just a minor part. Yeah, of course it does. Fascism is their blunt instrument the ruling class used to maintain bourgeois class relations through force. The goal is corporatism, yeah. I mean, like, take a look at what they're doing in Ukraine, right? Like, they're happy to fund these Nazis. Like, they're happy to fund these Nazis, man. Like, the Nazis are fundamentally their allies, and they know it. Look up The Red Banner is Raised on YouTube. Based Palestinian socialist song. Sure. Red Banner is Raised. YouTube. I mean, you know, until we can't. Like, this will get removed soon. Account gets deleted if you die. Yeah, right? Like, that's gonna really matter. And like I've played some games, like if you play a game like Diablo 2, for example, and Diablo 2's economy is like a never-ending upward kind of thing. But if you play it on hardcore mode and your character dies, well then suddenly that creates like an interesting economy, because the only thing that passes forward is stuff that you keep in your stash, right? And so you got to start picking and choosing. Well, what do you actually want to send forward? Because when your character dies, it all goes away, right? And so it does create this interesting economy that has the cycle, right? As long as the character actually dies. Because if the character doesn't die, then it doesn't matter. You just keep all your stuff and you keep growing exponentially forever, right? Communist economies are also not limited by the discipline of markets. They can overproduce resources and drive the price to zero, which destroys the profits of capitalists worldwide. Yeah, exactly. But that's a really good point. Like, so here's a big problem for capitalists, right? And it is actually a problem for the capitalist class, which is if everybody gets access to solar panels, and if everybody starts producing power with solar panels and with solar energy, amongst other forms of power generation, well then power will become zero, right? That you won't actually be able to charge for power because everyone will have such availability to it. It's an enormous capitalist problem because you can't be a worthless middleman and just be this worthless investor class, this bourgeoisie class, if if everybody has access to it. So they need to manufacture scarcity. Right, which is what they do. They manufacture scarcity, and so you're in a situation where literally your system disincentivizes and fights against free energy. There's something wrong with your system. Like there's something wrong with your system, which we know. There's something wrong with North America. Like the North American mind is corrupted. And there's something deeply wrong with it. Like, and I actually think that we have to start having like really deep and genuine conversations about the reality of this. Like, what is this brain rot we are suffering from? And we are suffering from it. Like it is real. Like it's for sure real. That North America has fallen into this absurdist dream world where we genuinely believe we are like a superior species, a superior type of human, while simultaneously showing no evidence whatsoever that is actually the case. Like we are a bloodthirsty, barbaric group of monsters, and it's obvious, and it's really, really obvious. And what is actually fueling this? What is actually fueling this barbarism? The white supremacist ethos, the manifest destiny ethos, the idiocy of the end of history, like all of this nonsense that we've actually been espousing in serious ways. And when people actually stand up and start saying like, hey, like none of this actually works, they get attacked and purged from the society, like in this like McCarthyite kind of way. What is the beating heart of this? Why is this happening? Like, and how come we can't shake it? How come we can't grow up? How come we can't actually have a serious conversation about the nature of reality and what it is to be a human in reality, and instead we have to just be this commodity class, you know? And we really are like diminishing the potential of what humans could actually do in the world in serious and significant ways that are observable. I'm more or less of the opinion that in 10 years' time, like unless we go nuclear and just blow the place up because we're so bloodthirsty and fucking psychotic, China is going to make us look like fucking assholes. Like we're going to look very dumb, like really, really, really dumb, to the rest of the world, right? We're not going to think that we look dumb because we don't know we don't pay attention to what the rest of the world thinks. Obviously not. And we're actively purging what the rest of the world thinks from our ranks, right? We're actively shutting down network opposing views and opposing television and opposing stuff, right? So what's going to come out the other side of this is that the entire rest of the world, which is the vast majority of the world, is going to take a look at a place like China and be like, oh, fuck, shit, yeah, we got to get on board. Like, we got to be doing what this shit's doing. Like, look at these guys take off. Like, and they are going to take off. They're going to take off in a way that is going to blow everyone's brains out. It's going to be incredible to watch. It's going to be huge, right? Unless the Americans can just go nuclear and bomb the shit out of everybody. But the Americans are so fucking thick and so fucking stupid that they don't even give a fuck. Like, the Americans are literally just, like, fomenting a war here so that they can pay some guys at Raytheon to fucking sell weapons. Like, there's this reductive, childish, backward way of thinking about the world and monetary policy and all of this stuff. And the vast majority of the world is going to watch China just rise up and just while America just falls into a shithole. And Americans are going to sit here the whole time going, USA, USA, USA. Like, brutal. No, too bad, Mock. You missed it. You missed it. It wasn't a 7, it was a 6. Well, look, and all, like, there's no such thing as a society without a market, right? Like, the idea that, like, every society has had markets. Markets exist. Like, a market is not a capitalist system. That if you want to talk about what's actually natural in human relations, well, it's certainly markets. Just the idea that people gather and trade in a spot. Like, that's not a capitalist edifice. That's not something that belongs to capital, right? That what defines capitalism is who owns shit, right? And one of the great propaganda wins by the capitalists has been convincing huge segments of the population that markets are capitalism. So when communist China opens up its markets to foreign influence, the capitalists get to stand up and say, capitalism won. Yeah, China solved all its poverty because of capitalism. It was capitalism that did that. Like, it's so fucking dumb. Like, it's just real dumb. And I want to put all through all the scholarly lens, have strong work to demonstrate how capitalism simply leads to those conclusions. Yeah. Markets are not the issue. Vis-a-vis socialism, communism, markets exist to simply trade goods and services. Yet the parasitic nature of finance, capital, and markets is the issue. Yeah. Yeah, the USSR had market, not a market economy. Yeah. That is the vote for dollar argument. One of the most meaningless ways for the populace to vote. Yeah, I mean, the vote with your dollar argument is literally like, oh, so you want it to be as undemocratic as possible. Because in that system, there's a small group of people who have all of the dollars and a larger group of people who have no dollars whatsoever. So vote with your dollars is like anti-democracy. It's as if you had a democracy, but only 5 guys got all the votes and everybody else got like 1 vote at best. The law of supply and demand don't go away because socialist society has been formed. Yeah. And like, the argument though would be that like a socialist society would come up with a more egalitarian way to resolve issues of scarcity, right? That like, and we've done that here in the West before. Like, we've had rationing, like we've done that kind of stuff. And we use it because we understand that it's a more civilized way to do things. That when there's scarcity, right? Like if there's like a rice shortage or a food shortage, well, it would only be a barbarous society that would allow one person to walk away with all the food while everyone else starved, right? So you create a rationing system so that everybody can get access to food, right? And that's just a humane way to deal with an issue of scarcity. But if you worship the market, if you worship the free market as if it's a god that you need to pay fealty to, all blood to the blood god, then when people starve to death while other people are buying bushels and bushels of food, you just say, oh, well, that's just a sacrifice we need for freedom, right? Like, we have we have like a serious brain rot. There's something very serious happening here in the West that, like, I've been talking about this all the time, guys, and I hate to bring it up because I don't want to be like a big downer, but like the famines are going to be brutal when they happen here. Like, we're going to experience some very serious famines because of climate change, right? They're already starting. Like, they're already starting to happen. They're already starting to have impacts. As this region begins to desertify, right? We've already had gigantic droughts throughout this region in here, and this is important farmland, right? Once this shit starts to go down and we have big famines, you're really going to see how barbarous this system actually is. And you're going to have people like Kim Kardashian being like, people just need to keep working. Work, bitch, work. Right? While people are literally starving in the streets. Like, it's coming. And the free market worship, the treatment of the free market as if it's a god, right? Well, you're going to see what kind of a god it is, right? It's a blood god. It's a chaos god, and it demands sacrifice. And we're going to give it to them. Like, that's the thing. Like, none of these guys are going to have like a come to Jesus moment. There's not going to be a moment where everybody goes like, well, we need to make sure that everybody has access to food. Like, that's not coming. It's not happening, right? We are going to experience starvation. There's going to be a big famine that sweeps through, and we're just going to watch those people starve while rich people literally sit on so much food that they just throw it away. Like, this ethos that we have where we throw away 50% of our food, it's going to keep happening. We're just going to keep doing that, right? And then we'll hire police to protect, just like we're doing now. What do we do now, right? We hire police and security guards to protect bins that we throw food into. That's what we do now, right? And it's going to keep happening while people are literally emaciating themselves over it. Like, it's coming. And it is like, that is the force that is going to drive revolutionary fervor in this country, right? When our ideology, when our evil, like our like satanic demonic evil begins to literally have people starve as grocery stores continue the process of throwing food away, right? Like, that's what really is going to drive the revolutionary fervor in this country, because we're obviously brain rotted. Like, we're obviously brain rotted. Like, we lack the capacity to have reason. We don't even know how to start having reason. Like, that's how bad it is. And because we don't even know how to start having reason in the first place, the only thing that's going to actually drive a revolutionary fervor in this country is hunger. Absolutely. Like, when the hunger sweeps through, those people are going to revolt. And it's going to take that. Like, that's how brain rotted we are. Like, we're extremely brain rotted. We don't even know how to begin to think. You know, the thing I find so funny is that the whole poverty wage line and how it is determinate here in Canada, the poverty is like, okay. Great rant today, John. As usual, could have been Tilted, Don't Look Up, featuring Nukes. Yeah, could have been titled, rather. Don't Look Up, featuring Nukes. Yeah. I mean, the thing about today, Adam, is especially, like, as YouTube is removing anti-Ukrainian stuff and all this kind of stuff. Well, today was perfect because it was like, this is the current director of the CIA when he was the Russian ambassador. Like, it's getting so obvious now that we can use Western sources. We don't even need to use, like, Russian sources. We don't even need Russian television anymore. Like, we don't need any of that, right? They're banning all of this, but we don't need it, right? Because the sources are so, it's so obvious what's happening. Like, it's so obvious. 19K a year while the U.S. is 26K a year, yet the cost of rent. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's just brutal, man. I went to KFC. I missed Lynch's rigged bingo. Wait a minute. Wages are the result of surplus value created by labor. It's an economic ripoff on the face of it. Yeah. labor theory of value proposed by Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill. Marx simply proved what a fraud the theory is to workers. Yeah. Base channel. I hope so. My own experience is when minimum wage goes up, it forces other business wages goes up as well. Here in PEI, I've seen the minimum wage going up from $12 an hour to $13. Like, and their solution to this is inflation. Like, that's the solution, right? So that the workers get a little leg up, right? And so what are they doing? They're just inflating the market, inflating the economy, so that your $13 will go back down to the $7. Well, because they don't want to pay wages. They want it to be zero, right? If they could get away with zero, they would, right? Profit is an ego rush. Yeah, no kidding, eh? I'm with you on the brain rot. I'm trying to focus on that now personally, trying to fix my brain, determine what is real, what is right. Source documents. Source documents. Also, like this is why I fixate pretty consistently on the chakra system, right? Which it doesn't matter if you actually believe that there's spheres of energy inside of you. Like, that's completely irrelevant, right? It's a useful visualization tool. It's a useful way to root yourself in reality. Because what are we, right? We are quantum beings. We are that, right? We are a singular energy. We are the same system, right? And we are that system attempting to figure itself out. And we have devolved into total chaos because we're falling for the illusion. We're falling for the pretty lights that are in front of us, right? We actually believe that the differences in our capabilities matter, right? When they don't. Not really. Not in a fundamental way. That, like, sure, I can reach that shelf, but that doesn't make me, like, a better person. It doesn't mean that I'm, like... And this is often what the conservatives... Like, when we talk about equality, right? When I talk about equality, I mean equality of validity. That my life is valid, and just as valid as yours, and yours is just as valid as mine. And that all life is equally valid in and of itself. Whereas the conservatives, when they hear equality, they think equality of capability, right? And this is where the Nazism comes in, because if you have a disability or something, well, they think you should be purged, right? Because you're not useful. Because that's what matters to conservatives and Nazis, right? Is your usefulness to their war effort. And if you get rooted in thinking this way, that we are part of this creative force that certainly exists, like certainly, and we are all equal in that. Everybody is born randomly generated. We have our experiences and then we die, right? This is a great equalizer, an enormous leveling force. And then you operate from there, right? And if you think from that position, well, then you can't be a bigot, right? Because a person who lives in China was randomly generated there. They didn't choose to be in China. They have their own lived experiences, their own life, their own culture, their own language, their own worldview, and their own perception. And chances are really good that the way that they're operating within that system, they probably know more about it than you do, right? So you should, when they stand up and say something, you should listen. Because they're probably closer to the mark about their own lived experiences than you are, right? And I think this way about, like, homosexuals, about trans people, about all of this kind of stuff. You should probably listen and believe what they say, because they probably know more about the subject than you do. Why? Because they're living it. Because, and, like, this is the thing that blows me away about conservatives. It's like their skepticism when, like, feminists say things about stuff, right? And it's just like, don't you think women know more about what it is to be a woman living in the society than you do, straight white man, right? Like, there's a ton of that going on. And that's why when I talk about, like, what's the importance in terms of the scale of what we should pay attention to first, humanity's at the top, right? Like, it's the first thing. And everything else is underneath it. Like, our humanity matters first. Right? Because that's like an articulation of the chakra system, like your root, right? You start entrenched as a base human in this situation, right? And the chakra system, in my view, explains this brain rot in many ways, what we're talking about. Because we really, like, we don't acknowledge this, but it's absolutely true. We live first in our root, right? That's where we shit. That's where we piss. That's where we fuck, right? It's crucially important, right? If that was removed, if you didn't have those things, you would die, right? And it's where it's where we begin. It's where the life process starts, right? And then you move up through your pleasure center, your power center, your heart, right? And in terms, so take a look at the Ukrainian crisis, this situation. We literally are just operating as a, like, what would be called a knee-jerk reaction from our root, but we haven't even connected to our brain at all. And, like, the only articulation we could come up with is stand with Ukraine. Like, that's it. And you can see it. We're giving information to people, right? We're giving information to people, but it's not penetrating. It's not getting down into their heart. It's not getting into their power center. It's not getting there, right? It's because it contraveils what they have already infused into their body, which is that we're good, right? And it really is as simple as that. Like, people are like, we're good. And any information that contraveils this idea that we're good, even though there's an infinite amount of it, gets discarded because we're good. And that's it. We're good, they're bad. So it's like a fucking total brain rot. That's at the most basic level of how a person thinks about the world. Like, we're not good. Like, this society is not good. Like, but you're just dealing with people who are completely shut off from their own understanding of their own reality and their own self, that they can't even handle that information. They don't have the processing centers for it. They don't have the capability to understand it, right? And those that might have the capability to be able to do it only do it insofar as it justifies their base premise, which is that I'm good. We're good. My society is the best, right? Which is falsifiable on the face of it. Like, your society's not the best, it's just one of many, right? Which are all equally valid to one another. Anyway, yabba yabba yabba. The whole problem that you are highlighting about our culture is a huge region I want to get into psychology and trying to figure out the answer. There's so much research I want to do, yeah. But my first focus, I need to find a way to get myself financially stable while studying those topics. Well, that's one of the big benefits of the capitalist system, is that it is by its nature destabilizing. That you can't actually investigate the self and get your feet on the ground and thereby operate in any kind of serious way, because the system itself is destabilizing, right? That you have to sell yourself to this market dominated by an ownership class, by an oligarch class, right? That's step one. And if you can't do it, right? If you can't manage to do that, it's extremely destabilizing, right? So you can't possibly find a way to get enjoyment or find your power center or find any kind of real benefit whatsoever, right? Like, you can't go up the chain in a way that's stable to even get into your brain or get into your meta thinking, right? Because you're just spending all your time scrabbling around, trying to find your feet, trying to get into your root, trying to find stability, right? So as long as you're destabilized, you can never get into a place where you can actually do a meaningful critical analysis of anything, right? Because you're too busy trying to fucking find food. And that's the whole point of the system. Dust off the song, I owe my soul to the company store, yeah. Biden announced in his SOTU where the Intel is going to build its 20 billion semiconductor megasite, up to 8 factories. Yeah, but this is the thing, is that even if that's the idea, right? Even if that's the idea that they're going to build some kind of semiconductor or some kind of megasite or some kind of thing, right? It fails on the face of it, and it fails because the capitalists are going to do things to ensure that it does, right? The capitalists are going to, buy the land, right? So this is the site where we're going to build this semiconductor. So the capitalists are going to buy the land and jack the price, right? And get in the way. Oh, we're going to use this type of resource. So the capitalists are going to buy that resource and hoard it, right? They're going to do everything they can to get in the way of the process actually being completed. And if the end point of that process is that, oh, we create something that can't be metered and exploited, we can't be worthless middlemen at it, then it'll fail. Because they don't want that to happen. Capitalism, like this myth, this total farcical myth that capitalism innovates, of course it doesn't. Like, all capitalism innovates is new, fun ways to enslave the populace. That's all it does, right? New, fun ways to insert worthless middlemen into the procedure. That's all it is. That's all it does. And it's going to get obvious. It's going to get shockingly obvious that, like, as these, like, $20 billion semiconductor mega sites fail to be built, China's going to build 30 of them, right? They're just going to build them. And in fact, they'll build a couple of them and be like, oops, we don't need those there, so they'll blow them up and then build them somewhere else. Like, by the time we get one of these built, and it'll be built so shoddily and so poorly that it'll fall apart in 5 years. By the time we get that done, China will have built 100 of these. They'll have built a superconductor. They'll have built one that's actually based on quantum mechanics, and like they'll have built one in space. You know, like we actively dismantle our like the only thing that we know how to build well at all is bombs, and those blow up anyway, so they don't even need to be built that well. So here's a song that comes out of the Virginia coal mines, right? That during the colonial period, the coal miners would spread around pamphlets into Europe and, of course, into the United States, saying, hey, come to the coal mines. High wages, right? High wages. And they paid those high wages. But what they didn't tell the people was that the company not only owned the mine, but they owned all the land around the mine. Thereby, they owned the housing. And they also owned the company's store. So they monopolized the housing and they monopolized the food. And the price that they set for the shelter and the food was higher than the wages that they paid. And so as you did the job, you fell further and further into debt against the company's store. This leads to a massive unionization effort. The battle for Blair Mountain, where the corporations actually fight with troops against the organized workers, and the first aerial bombardment against citizens of the United States by a company dropping a bomb on them. So this is their song. Some people say a man is made out of mud. Poor man's made of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bone, and a mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. If you see me coming, step aside. A lot of men didn't and a lot of men died. I got one fist of iron, the other's of steel. The right one don't get you, the left one will. You load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. A poor man's there to suffer and bleed, to pay for a rich man's wealth and greed. Take this here shovel, get down in that earth. The money you make me, that's all that you're worth. You load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul. Whoa, 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 whoa. You load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Capitalism builds slave markets. That's all it does. That's all it wants to do. The only time that we have been able to shake literal chattel slavery from our society is through an enormous, massive slave effort. Enormous magic war effort, which only made the capitalists readjust their model to create new forms of slavery, like the current prison system in the United States. Like, all capitalism does is create slavery. That's what it wants, right? That's what it wants. That they want to pay $0 in wages. They want you to work for free. It actually would be worship of Slanesh, if you really think about it, because we are so addicted to pleasure and we go to war not because we want to fight for blood, but for the pleasure of war. Yeah, I think there's something to that. Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, we'll just pump out all the fresh water of the lakes and then we'll live in the northern desert. Yeah. Like, it's so fucking bullshit. Like, the shit that we're doing, dude. Another reason that is not worship of the corn is because corn want to shed blood through violence and as bloody as possible through your own bare hand. Yeah, exactly. That's not how the capitalists operate, right? That they want you to fight for them. How's this for effed up? Police will guard garbages except when the law says they can take evidence from thrown out things. Exactly, yeah. Profit is dead labor. It makes sense that one should look at economies as circulatory systems. So the idea of maximizing profit for the sake of it will basically create economic heart attacks, yeah. Inescapable fact is that when we build a society based on greed, selfishness, and a ruthless competition, the fruits we can expect to reap are economic insecurity at home and international discord abroad. Tommy Douglas. Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, absolutely. Like, this system is a failure on... If the purpose of a system is stability, this obviously fails. I had a conservative woman who hates CRT so much that when I pointed out that one of the criteria of CRT analysis was the subjective experience of a black person, her response is that too subjective, we can't qualify that. Yeah, I'm like, so what makes me want to listen to your opinion if you think that their opinion has any weight at all? Exactly. Like, why does she think her opinion matters if she doesn't think the opinion of others matters? Semiconductor factories, they may not fail, but they will not create jobs. They will, by necessity, be mostly automated because the reason they left was because of wage pressure. Yeah, the real issue here is economic nationalism. Talking about company towns, yeah. Sounds familiar. I don't know. I really love the story, though. I wonder how long before we live work just like that. Return to company town days. We're there already, dude. Like, we're there already. Like, the wage doesn't pay the rent. Like, we already have homeless. We already have this kind of thing. Yeah, bombs are the greatest of all commodities. They're really expensive. You can only use them once. Yeah. All right, let's do a rapid fire, because I've been chatting. I wanted to point something out. Every so often, Vosh comes in. I found a clip of him that I think is definitely worth sharing.
It is possible. Please, right now, uncuck your dumb shit, libcuck, fucking SJW brains. And
trigger warning, by the way. Trigger warning. I forgot that's not the worst of it.
Recognize this empirically correct fact that I am about to spit. It is possible for an adult and a child to have a sexual relationship and for it to have positive outcomes on the child as well. That is possible, okay? It is possible. Please.
Just wanted to share that. Just in case you were one of these guys that thought Vosh was worth a damn at all. Just heads up. Thank you, Harry. I appreciate that, bud. I do appreciate that. I'm so looking forward. I hope the fucking Open mics open up soon. I could really use it. Yeah, remove Vosh from the premises. Yeah. Like, oh wow, pedophilia. Okay, cool. Cool. Yep, that's no comment. Yep. Like, we're good, right? Like, we're good. Like, there are moments where you do just get to say, we're good. Like, that's it. Bye-bye. And if you're not saying bye-bye to that, then we got a bigger problem. Russia calls UN meeting alleging U.S. military biological activities in Ukraine. U.S. calls it false flag effort. Now that Russia has made these false claims and China has seemingly endorsed this propaganda, we should all be on the lookout for Russia to possibly use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine or to create a false flag operation using them. It's a clear pattern. So I'm more or less of the opinion that the United States is preparing to do a biological attack and claim that it's a Russian operation. Like, pretty classic false flag behavior here. They're preemptively, like, they're preempting it, right? So expect a biological attack is what I'm saying. That's okay, Watson. I don't think I will. I just don't think I will. Right? Like, children can't consent. Like, that's really it. And if anything, the science is showing that we, like, human beings, our brains don't really fully formulate until our early 20s or mid 20s. And so if anything, it should be the opposite direction, right? Like, where the age of consent lies is somewhat debatable. And there are people who make the statement like, well, if a 14-year-old has sex with a 14-year-old, like, I don't think that that's abusive. But the whole idea, like, I can't even believe this needs to be explained. Like, there comes a point where one person knows what's going on to a degree that what they're doing is not seeking consent. They're abusing the fact that this other person can't consent. That one is an adult and the other is a child, and children will defer to adults because children don't have consent. They don't have the capacity to consent, which is why pedophilia is a form of rape, because they lack the capacity to consent. So if you're defending that form of relationship, you're defending child rape. It's very, very straightforward. Like, it's very, very straightforward. And, like, is it, if you have, like, oh, a 19-year-old had sex with a 17-year-old, like, there is, like, a great, because law doesn't know where that line actually falls. But if you're trying to form the argument that a child can have a positive sexual relationship with an adult, you're a pedophile. Or at least a pedophile defender, at least. If you want more money here, he will make you a good capitalist. If you want more seductive, if you want to go to war, simply satisfy your ego, he will grant you. We should, if we were logical, have tough time seeing a Russian chemical weapons attack, as OPCW has confirmed that Russia is chemical weapons free as of 2017. Yeah, but they just seized a couple of, 11 at least, Ukrainian biolabs, right? So the narrative is like, oh, we did have labs in Ukraine, but they were just for research purposes, and now the Russians are using them against us, right? The more I think about that, the more I can see we worship Sanesh. Yeah, after all, capitalism and it will drug its population so the populace will not deal with their reality of the situation. Yeah. Okay. Enough about that. Yeah, is Russia setting the stage to use chemical weapons in Ukraine, right? They're getting us prepared for it. They're preparing us for a false flag attack in Ukraine. Like, postmodernist philosophy is a hallmark of the pseudo-left, for sure. Like, every time I get into a postmodernist conversation, it's like kind of incoherent. Like, I'm just like not. Twitter is censoring reporting on Ukrainian Nazis on the pretext of abusive behavior. I've been locked out of my Twitter account over this post. Twitter has locked me out of my account, prevented me from posting the following tweet, which they claim is abusive. They're also threatening to suspend my account altogether if I post similar things in the future. Like, this International Women's Day, we think of the remarkable women of Ukraine. Their strength, bravery, and resilience are symbolic to the spirit of the nation. This is the black sun. That's a overtly Nazi symbol, right? Nazi symbol, the black sun, pops up in lots of troop photos from Ukraine. Even NATO posted one. Neo-Nazi terrorist Brenton Tarrant wore the black sun and the bulletproof vest he used to help him murder 51 Muslims in New Zealand in 2019, as well as this manifesto. I attached the above photo to my tweet, although I did not initially say as much on day one. Twitter is now saying the tweet was abusive, right? So if you tweet something that's abusive to Nazis, right, it's a real problem. Why Canada is losing affordable rental housing faster than it's being built? I haven't actually read this, but I assume it's just like rich people are buying up the market, right? Canada's been losing affordable rental units, right? Neither the private market nor the public sector has articulated plans on how to deal with it. According to the research from Steve Pomeroy, senior research fellow at Carleton University in Ottawa, rentals that were once considered affordable are seeing significant price increases. Yeah, there's jacking the price. 1 in 3 Canadians are renting. Financialization in housing. As Canada's real estate market has heated up, large investors have bought industrial standardization and financial focus to the landlord business. Bank of Canada says that 1 in 5 people buying a house are doing so as an investment. Like, what do we need here, man? Like, what do we need? Oh, I probably didn't remove it, but it probably just got removed. Like, YouTube just removes shit. I never know why. And sometimes it's innocuous. I never understand why. Yeah, the apartment I live in right now, like, if I have to move out of this apartment, I'm basically going to move out of the city. Because, like, I've taken a look and, like, I can't even downsize. Right? I've thought about, like, the apartment I'm in is a bit big for me, actually. And I've thought about getting into, like, just a bachelor suite, right? Just like a small little bachelor suite. The rent has gone up so dramatically, so quickly, that it would be a price increase for me and a reduction in size. So it doesn't make sense for me to do that. But if I get into a position where I've got to move out of this space because it's too expensive for me, which is possible, right? I have to basically move out of the city and try to find a cheaper rent. I'd probably go back to Manitoba, right? Probably just try to find cheap rent somewhere else. I don't really want to do that. I like living in the city. I especially I feel like something crazy is going to happen here in Toronto. Like, something nuts is going to happen in Toronto for sure. And I want to be here for it. Because, seems to me like everyone's really pent up. There's a lot of energy going on right now. Hooverville time, you bet, man. Now counterpose the affordable housing issue with the PPC platform. Yeah, exactly. No shit. Rich guy. Like, look, this housing issue is actually so easy to solve. It's stupid how easy it would be to solve. Like, literally, you could literally put a wicket at a Service Canada that is so that people can walk into it and say, hello, I don't have a house or a home or an apartment or whatever. And we would go, oh dear. And then we would take one of the houses or apartments away from the investor class, who are worthless, and transfer it to the person who doesn't have it. Problem solved. Oh, John, won't that collapse the market? Yeah. Which it should be collapsed. Like, this market should absolutely be collapsed. Like, who gives a fuck about this fake bullshit market? Like, sorry, your God needs to die. sorry, we've got to slay your god that you worship, but there are homeless people. Get fucked. You think people will actually protest someday from the left? Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I've met some of them. I do, and I mean, I've seen it. Like, I've seen it. Like, the climate change rallies were real, man. And fairly recently, too. Like, climate change protests get like 500 people right now. The thing that's really held people back from the left has been COVID, right? And that's starting to shake loose. People are starting to get a little bit, the hesitancy is going away. And I suspect that we will actually see a fairly decent protest movement show up once this sort of hesitancy goes away. And once people start to really realize, like, if we don't actually do this, it's not going to get any better, right? And I think the energy, it's a pent-up energy. It's a pent-up energy. And so once that energy starts moving, and like once the artists come back, right? Like for the last little while, we've lived in a dead society, like culturally, really. Like the only arts that we've been consuming at all has been Netflix, essentially, which is just like pretend art, if you ask me. But like you haven't been able to go to like open mic nights. You haven't been able to go to shows. You haven't been able to do any of that because there's just been no, like the market's been closed down. And once that starts kicking off, like guys, like a person like me is going to start going to these open mic nights and these open mic events, and I'm going to talk how I talk now, like. I'm going to play the music that I play, and then I'm going to say, fuck all of these people. Like, fuck all of these people. We need to protest. We need to riot. Like, it's, and there is a pent-up energy for it. It's just everybody's so isolated. COVID has, like, really, really hurt, like, the left in big, serious ways. Well, the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020 morphed from simply an issue of police violence towards black folks into a more class-based protest. That's why Tom Cotton did an op-ed in the New York Times to bring out the army. Yeah, exactly. You gotta, if black folks start seeing themselves as humans, right? Start seeing yourselves as humans. Ukraine got guns faster than Flint got water, and the water was cheaper. Go. You don't see anyone singing Imagine Now. You know what? I love that song, actually. Imagine chords. I actually do. Like, I think it is actually just like a beautiful piece. Oh wow, this is not a version that I'm familiar with. I usually play it on my ukulele. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Ooh. A little too high for me. We could learn Power to the People by Lennon. Less familiar with that tune. Oh yeah, poverty wage plutocrats coming from the Maple. Glad to see that we're starting to talk about these guys as they are, right? Like, I found that so funny when we were all just like Russian oligarchs. I'm like, can we start calling our own oligarchs? Like, can we stop calling them billionaires and start calling them what they are, which is oligarchs, right? Do you want to change topic and talk about union? I have a pamphlet that talks about how unions can be a source of the way to take control from a capitalist and turn them into a worker co-op. I mean, that's sort of the goal, right? Like, my oligarchs. My complaint about the union movement here in Canada, at least, is that I think that the unions have more or less been co-opted by the capitalist class. That they're just part of the edifice now, right? That they're just like the human resources wing of the capitalist class. You want to come up, buddy? You want to come up? Okay. Like, in the pandemic's first year, as many workers struggled to make ends meet, top Canadian executives' pay rose an average of 17%. Canada's billionaires also added an extra $78 billion to their wealth. Oh yeah, absolutely, bud. I'll take a look at it. Or Meat City, Lenin's Ode to Capitalism. Yeah, dude. It's there's always been a little part of me that has believed that the guy that shot Lenin was put up to it. But, like, he's in prison. Like, I think he's still alive, if I'm not mistaken. And he's never really copped up to anything. Like, he just, like, who shot John Lennon? Yeah. Mark David Chapman. Just like a nut job, right? And it's like, I think about that all the time. Like, John Lennon would still be alive. Can you imagine John Lennon commenting on what's happening? Like, what would John Lennon have to say about all this? Oh yeah, the entire Animals album by Pink Floyd. Well, I mean, all of Pink Floyd's stuff is pretty major critique. Like Dark Side of the Moon. Like, Dark Side of the Moon is a fairly scathing critique of British society, if you ask me. Like, really, really robustly done too. Oh wow. Speaking of robust, this isn't just a pamphlet, dude. Like, this is like a 59 pages. And there's sources at the back? Dude, this isn't a pamphlet. This is a book. Straight up, this is a book. I've read and sold books that were less than this. Not the early set. You might know more about that than I do, bud. From the NDP, right? Like, how do you know that the inflation line is total bullshit, right? How do you know that the inflation line is total bullshit? Because the corporations are making more money than they've ever made, right? Like, that's how you know it's bullshit. Like, it's Uh-oh, searching YouTube. Bill Maher apparently has no problem with, because we really care about what Bill Maher has to say. Like, it's unbelievable to me, man, that, like, I shouldn't say it's unbelievable, but, like, Bill Maher's takes are, like, the worst. Like, they're so, like, rich old man says. Like, they're not intelligent. He's not smart. I think the best thing that was ever said about Bill Maher came from Norm Macdonald, where Norm Macdonald just said, you know, I'm more or less of the opinion that it's a comedian's job to be funny. And some comedians, I think, they want to be seen as smart. But I think a comedian should be funny. And I was like, yeah, I think that that's a scathing indictment of Bill Maher. That, like, he wants to be seen as smart, but his job is to be funny. And he fails at both. Lennon would be blocked on all media, yeah. They already minimized his impact on the Ono McCartney narrative, yeah. True enough. Calls for a basic income in Canada are getting louder. However, the ruling Liberals are adamant the economy is back on track and that no additional supports are needed. Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, these guys are Nazi sympathizers. Of course they're going to say that. Line go up. Look, line. Stonks. Like, they are going, like, they are not going to actually implement anything like that at all until the working class surrounds the halls of power. Right? And I actually think that their hope is that will be all that will be the ask. Right? Like, that's what they're angling for. Make the working class and make the working people work their asses off. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Watson. Work their asses off so that they'll spend all of their energy on getting this basic income implemented. Right? Which then the capitalists can manipulate and fuss about with, like they do with all of these sorts of things, right? Instead of having the working class actually say, hey, fuck these capitalists entirely. Like, yeah, exactly. If we surround the halls of power for just UBI, we're offed. Yeah, exactly. But that's the goal, if you ask me. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to They're trying to funnel in, trying to make people spend as much political energy as they can, right? To get people funneled, to put up as much resistance as possible until finally that energy tips it over and actually makes it happen, right? So, like, this is why I say if we're going to surround the halls of power, we should redraw the Constitution and just, like, get rid of these guys. Like, just straight up, be rid of these capitalists. And, like, the idea that we are tolerating these, like, worthless parasites who are obviously leading us into just total destruction, like, that just insane bullshit that they're putting on us is unbelievable. And I take a look at the NDP as part of this grift, by the way, that if Canadians get sick of the Liberal Conservative Alliance, then they'll swing over to the NDP, whose solution is raise taxes on the rich by 2%. Right? Like, we need to be discussing the reactionary nature of the nation state itself. Yeah, that's getting pretty deep, dude. Like, that's getting pretty deep. People are not ready for that. Like, people are not ready for that. The average citizen is still, like, I think the average citizen is still struggling with the concept of class. Like, that there are owners and there are owned, right? Like, I think that I don't think the average citizen is at all prepared to have the conversation that you're talking about there. That, like, they don't, like, we don't have class consciousness in this society. Like, at all. Like, 0%. And so that's what we're trying to build, is the concept of class consciousness, right? And until you've got something like that more seriously embedded in the minds of the citizenry, you can't really discuss the reactionary nature of the nation state. Like, you can't really talk about something like that and gain any traction. Like, we're very dumb, dude. Like, this Ukrainian crisis has really, really convinced me that we are extremely dumb and extremely bloodthirsty. Like, we're really, really basic. We're really basic. Like, we're not much different from, like, an ape that just wants to smash things. Like, we're really not much different from that. And like that's becoming really, really obvious even at the political level. Right? We like to think that the people we elect and the people who we put in power are going to have, like, thoughtful ways and know more about the situation, all this, but they're just fucking dumb apes, right? This lot of liberals are the worst because they just literally read cue cards. They don't know anything. Like, they're straight up just reading cue cards. Like, I'd be very, very surprised to find that they knew anything about any kind of political philosophy whatsoever. Like, we're talking about, like, a reduced intelligence on the political stage that is dramatically significant. And like a guy like Justin Trudeau, right? Like, one would assume that the leader of a country would work really hard to know what's happening in Ukraine at the moment. I don't think Justin Trudeau knows what's going on, right? I literally think that he's just told, like, this is what's happening. And he just goes, okay, and just accepts it at face value. Like, I think that our leaders have been more or less appointed to us and just completely like the powers, the what would be called the deep state is what's in control. Like, the guys like Justin Trudeau, and moreover, like, a guy like Justin Trudeau is just not interested. Like, he, at no point is he interested in looking at the structure of power and saying, like, and offering a critique or pushing back at all. Like, we're like completely fucked, if you ask me. Like, we're completely fucked. There's, like, no effort to unfuck our situation at all. Like, not even a little. And in fact, it's like the opposite. We're doing everything we can to just fuck ourselves over even harder, right? And it's all just like we have no class consciousness. We worship this market and we worship money so that we can basically just live like fucking animals, essentially. The backroom people in the Liberal Party need a photogenic front man that had a last name that harkened back to the better time after the Dion Ignatieff debacles. Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's very Machiavellian. Follows the Machiavellian line pretty sharply. So, yeah, exactly. In the meantime, Zelensky will be in Ottawa next week to do a Peter Pan peace dance with Justin in front of Parliament, and they will exchange sparkle socks. How nice. Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. And so, but the thing is like, Zelensky's not like, Zelensky and Trudeau are very similar to one another, right? Like, Zelensky's a literal clown, right? Like, the only way he could be closer to being a literal clown is if he was just a literal clown. And but he's like a comedian. So he's like so obviously just this front man that they jammed in front of us, right? Because the populace in Ukraine understood that their government had been couped, right? They understood that it had been couped. And so Zelensky got thrown in front of us saying, I want peace. And everybody was just like, yeah, like, obviously we want peace. But of course, he's completely irrelevant. He doesn't make decisions. Like, nobody listens to him. He just reads cue cards, basically. Like, the Nazis are doing what they want, because that's what Nazis do, right? They don't care what Zelensky says. They don't care what he thinks, right? And Zelensky's going to go around and talk this talk about how Ukraine is, we got to stand up for Ukraine and all this kind of stuff. And, like, the guy works for Nazis. Like, Why would you abandon your citizens at a time of war to go to Canada? Steely leaders for sure. I mean, look, Zelensky's got like a sweetheart deal, right? Like he can snort as much coke as he wants, right? He just has to stand in front of a camera every so often and read the lines that he's said to, like, yeah, I'm Jewish. How can there be Nazis here? Exactly, because there's no such thing as a Jewish Nazi collaborator. That there's no history of that. That doesn't exist. Like, when Obama was elected in office, racism was cured, right? There's no such thing as racism. We have a black president. There's a video of Zelensky talking with the Nazi where he was pleading with the Nazi to listen to him, and the Nazi just say to him, screw off. Yeah, they don't care about this guy. Why? I don't know why they would. Like, why would they give a shit about this guy? Yeah, legal weed in Canada. That must be it. Yeah, that's the beating heart of all our problems. Oh, yeah, here's my favorite. Facebook will temporarily allow posts calling for violence against Russians, calls for Putin's death. Wonka, wonka, wonk, wonk. Wonk. Like, and meanwhile, 3 years of militarized raids. Like, this is something that blows my face off, dude. Is that we are doing this right now. We are doing this right the fuck now. And we can't believe for even a moment. We can't believe for even a moment that we would also be funding Nazis while we act like literal fucking Nazis to First Nations people. Like, yeah, temporarily, exactly. You see Zelensky stand up making Nazi jokes like he's in favor of Nazis? Oof, I have not seen that, Zed. That would be a new wrinkle in it. Honestly, like, I think attacking Zelensky is a lost cause. Like, it's like, the people who are like all in on Zelensky they've lost their capacity. Like, they don't have the capacity to reason, right? They're just thinking with their root. That's all. Their root is in charge. Their root is in charge. And I should ask the chat, actually. Is the reason why the Russian military, is the reason why they're wearing Zs, or Zs if you prefer, because then that would make the people they're fighting not Zs? Is that actually the rationale behind that? Or is the Z, does it stand for something? Is there, what am I missing? Oh, I'm just asking that to the chat. It's just something I've wondered. I haven't done any research on it whatsoever. I've just noticed that the Russian military uses the letter Z on their stuff. And there's that scandal with that athlete who... there was the scandal with the athlete who wore a Z on his outfit. And that created like a kerfuffle. Like, what's the Z about? Does anybody know? Z stands for victory? Okay. I like my idea, though. I like that they're wearing a Z so that their enemies are not Zs. The Z and the other letters are explained on Pepe Escobar. It probably is acrylic character. Yeah, I think that's probably more likely. Like, it's pretty doubtful that Russian military would want their would use a symbol that's a pun. You know, doesn't seem to me that the Russian people, especially Russian military men, would be big fans of puns. I don't think that punmanship is a well respected. So, like, we're doing this. Like, this is the other thing. Like, we're doing this. Like, what makes you think that we're not also doing shit in Ukraine? Like, what makes you think that we're not also, like, funding Nazis in Ukraine, right? Like, it blows my brain out. Oh, more than 4,500 union educators from Minneapolis Public School are on strike. Strikes spreading across America. Boy, we need a general strike so bad, man. Yeah. This is a little bit of good news, so I wanted to report this really quickly. Trudeau rejects Zelensky's request for a no-fly zone, citing fears of Russian escalation. It's like, finally a little bit of sense in the conversation. Like, yeah, don't put up a no-fly zone. Like, that's insane. Putting up a no-fly zone? Ah, well. It's just something I'm curious about. It doesn't really matter. I know, right? This ASB military Twitter feed got suspended. You know you're in the shitter if you're locking down that kind of shit, dude. Like, oh, leader of the truck convoy protest sought to overthrow government. I mean, like, we know. They were pretty upfront about that. Right? It's just, could they? Alright. That's the end of it. Alright, guys. We reached the end of the night. Going into the weekend. Always remember, guys. You are a quantum being. Walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars, to make you not realize it, so that you'll stay the good little commodity you're meant to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it. Ask this question on Monday, dude. We'll talk about it. Good night.